open. We were one of the only people who decided to move forward with our 4th of July parade. So I think through all of this, some of these celebrations and some of the things that we've done have been good for the community, have been good for the people in this community. One of the things that people don't really talk about enough is, and I think one of the reasons that we do need to have our Christmas tree lighting event is because during these times, one of the things that people haven't talked enough about is just the overall mental health of people. And I think that the mental health of our community and the mentality of people to have the opportunity to celebrate a Christmas tree lighting, as little as that might seem, or as minor as that might seem, I think that's a big deal. And I think anything we can do that brings, again, some normalcy to people, some joy to people, that we can actively do as a community, I think that's great. There are people who are scared and who are worried, who probably won't come, and they shouldn't come. I think we've all said, and I've said many, many times, you need to do what you need to do to make sure your family's taken care of and your family is safe, and you can act in that manner that helps you take care of your family. And if you believe that being out, if it's outside in the open, then you can participate. I would add, though, I believe, Rob, isn't the governor's new restrictions where he did mention even outdoor congregate areas, as far as people don't need to be up and congregating if people were outside. Kind of the recommendation was to stay seated. I think that kind of went along with the whole no dancing order, but if that's the case, there is seating at the Eichelberger Amphitheater. So I think there is room where people could sit down on all the benches that are there. I think there's plenty of grassy areas where people could bring chairs and blankets, where social distancing really could be practiced in that outdoor environment. And we provide seating there. So if I've mistaken the way I understood that order, and maybe that is only inside, not outside, but when I hear congregate areas, I think about what our tree lighting ceremony might be. But I think we have the room for people to be seated if that's part of the order, where we wouldn't be openly violating, what I believe what the governor called a slowdown, not a shutdown. Rob, do you have anything am I understanding that right? Or, and I guess, and I would be interested in your opinion too. I mean, you've been, you and I have had all those conversations all summer about the events we were doing in the Aquatic Center, and we've always been on the same page. So I'm assuming that we're on the same page here from what you believe as the manager of the city, who works with all of our, very, very in tune with all of our EMS services. Is that still kind of the recommendation of the city as well, that we offer things that the city can participate in, and if they don't want to, they don't have to? Okay, thanks. Yeah, I appreciate that. And I think, some of these events are just kind of, they're dropping off. And I think I just saw where Washington Township was like the latest one to close or cancel their tree lighting event. So, as you said, we've kind of been a leader in still allowing things to go on in the whole region. And we probably do get people from other areas that come here to enjoy some of the things that we do. So certainly appreciate that. Mrs. Birch?
Yes. While we continued to run our events this summer, things have changed dramatically since then. They're projecting that tomorrow, if not tomorrow, the next day, the number of cases per day in Ohio are going to rise to 10,000. There's a public health of Montgomery County order for people to stay at home. Our schools are going remote. The kids that are coming home from college are going to stay home, many of them, through the rest of the year and do remote studying. I don't have a problem with having a tree lighting event for anybody that wants to go out there and stand in the open, but I do have a problem with our normal kids activities and things, and encouraging the kids to come out, because they will not be socially distanced while they're doing their activities or while they're drinking their cocoa or whatever else, and certainly not to talk to Santa. I think that it's not wise, because of the current coronavirus numbers, that we take the risks now. And the idea of us taking the lead is one thing, but this virus has hit a critical point, and we have to recognize that it's hit a critical point. And I would much rather focus on an alternate activity, like encouraging our businesses and our homeowners to our residents to light up the city and to create the Christmas cheer that way, and to put up their Christmas decorations and try to feel some normalcy during this really crazy holiday season. I am tempted to say I don't go out because I'm scared. At first it was for an abundance of caution, but now I'm scared. I really am. When the numbers start hitting about 10,000 a day and the hospitals are getting fuller and everything, I don't think that having the event at the Eichelberger is necessarily the right way to approach this holiday season with respect to looking out for our residents. And there are so many people. I know my son-in-law, starting Monday, his company, he works at Speedway, they're all sending everybody home to work remotely the rest of the year. And you're seeing more and more of that. So I don't know. I think that because the public health order is to stay at home, then we need to stay at home. We don't need to have activities for people to draw them back out of their houses. That's my input.
So I appreciate that input, Nancy. And I think that's, probably something that everyone needs to take into consideration. And I don't know if it's a modified, if it's some type of modified event in lighting the tree. Maybe it isn't the whole big gathering that we had before. But I tell you, one of the things that we're not thinking about, I do think that I think we're on the verge. We know that Montgomery County is one of the 3 counties on the watch list for the code, I guess the level 4 of the real state of emergency with this thing. The way I understand it is the county has hit those 6 out of the 8 indicators a couple times, but to advance to that next level, or level 4, you have to meet 6 of the 8 indicators in consecutive weeks. And I think that's what's put us on the watch list now, is that if we hit one more week consecutively where we've hit those 6 indicators, then we would end up being a purple county as well. So I think we have to be prepared to think, if it's still at a red level, I realize the numbers are getting worse, but if it's a red level, I think I would be okay with some type of a modified event at the Eichelberger. But I think if we get into a purple level, and I don't think somebody even asked the governor in the past, what does that mean? When you watch some of those press conferences he had, what does it even mean if you get to a purple level? What changes really happen? And the one that I saw, he wasn't even prepared to answer that question or say what the changes that would happen, because I don't think they really knew, or none of that was planned yet. I think now that Franklin County for Columbus has been put on a purple level, those instructions or those advisories are going to start coming out now for those counties, because there is a purple county. I think we'll be able to look not too far into the future to see what that means for Montgomery County and what happens here. So I think that is something that we have to be prepared for. And if we did prepare some type of event, a modified event at the Aquaburger, and if that level changes into a level 4, I think we got to be prepared to say, no, we can't do that. Mr. Webb?
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, thanks, Rob, for sending out the release from Montgomery County. And as I read it over several times. It's apparent that it is an advisory that is telling people to stay at home. And it clearly says to avoid attending social gatherings and scheduling events designed to bring people together. I know it's an advisory. I don't think, as Richard said, I don't think we're going to have to call out the militia to haul people off because they're gathering around a Christmas tree. I am concerned that we might be inviting people to gather and further spread COVID, as Nancy mentioned, through some of the activities that we've done before, the hot chocolate, the kids' play area, things like that. My suggestion, I guess, would be to present the itinerary for the tree lighting to the to Montgomery County Public Health and ask them, is this acceptable? And if it's not acceptable, we shouldn't be doing it. It is an advisory for a reason. And it's just my opinion. Thanks, Mayor.
Thanks, Mr. Webb. Mr. Hill?
Thank you. So my thoughts are that mental health is important, and so it's really to that point. I don't think that we should be canceling it if we are given the go-ahead from the health department. I would like to see it streamed in some way to Facebook so that those that do want to stay home and want to stay safe at home instead of going to it are able to also participate. I did want to speak on Mr. Shaw's statement that we have to that if we have the event that all of council should be included and all of council should be there. I feel that I was kind of demeaning and callous just to say that we should all be there when I believe that it's each individual's choice, and that we should be approaching it in a way that we feel most safe. I, as a council member, when I am choosing to do things or not do things, it has more to do with protecting my family, friends, and my community. And as you all know, I love Christmas the most. I mean, Christmas season is such a big part of my life. It's something that I think about pretty much all year. I put lights up and everything like that. But if I choose not to go to a tree lighting, that's my choice and not something that any other council member should force upon us. That's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thanks, Mr. Hill. Appreciate those comments. Mr. Otto.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to add in something I forgot to mention earlier. I know that through some discussions, there are some volunteer members who are not comfortable with the event as well, and others who aren't. And if that happens to be some of our staff or whatever, I just want to say that, as in the past, if the event goes on, I'll avail myself. I'll be there the whole day. So I'll be there and available for setup, cleanup, operation, and all that kind of good stuff as well. So just to put that out there, I certainly don't want it to be shut down due to lack of manpower.
Mr. Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to clarify a couple of points. One from Councilmember Webb. I think the second part of the city manager's statement was also referring to the curfew that was initiated by the governor from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. That was me providing direction as one council member that I do not believe we need to put policy to our police officers to stop and enforce that. So I hope that brought a little clarification to that comment, not to the Christmas tree event. Additionally, to Councilmember Hill's comments, it was not my intention to state that every council member needs to be there, but that every council member either needs to support this event moving forward or the event canceled altogether. Because this is a community event. We've just heard earlier this afternoon that the Historical Society has canceled their event. They are still going to light the tree. It's going to be without a ceremony, without an event. But I believe it's very important that this council not all attend, but all be supportive, or we find another way. And Mayor, you actually bring up a very valid point, that if this council does make a decision today and provide direction to the city manager to continue signing those contracts with different vendors and things of that nature, as long as they fall within the orders and those dollars are encumbered or expended. And let's say a week from now that we do turn into a purple situation, things do escalate. I think today we need to provide the city manager direction if that occurs. And I believe that's why the city manager has asked us to make that policy decision. And so those are the 3 points. And just to go ahead and give you my opinion, I do believe that if Montgomery County does turn purple and things do escalate, as the vice mayor has indicated through her research, then yes, at that point in time, I think the event should be canceled out of an abundance of caution and help to the community. Because at that point in time, to your point, Mr. Mayor, the 6 of the 8 indicators includes death and ICU intubation. And I think that's a very serious point, being the fact that we have several medical centers within Montgomery County, and a few of them very close to our community. So that is my full input. I hope that draws some light to some of those comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shaw. And I would just say too, I couldn't support a public gathering or an event if we move into that 4th level of an advisory of purple. So I know, Mr. Hill, you have your hand raised. Mrs. Baker has had her hand raised for a while. She hasn't. I haven't called her, so I'm going to go ahead and call on Ms. Baker to go ahead and give comments. And I know City Manager has some additional comments too. Yes, Ms. Baker.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate all your guys' input. I think it's very valuable. I do like Mr. Hill. Yeah, I was on my list also. Could we anyway possibly film the tree lighting or have live stream so people could watch it at a time that is convenient to them and at their own home? That was one input I had. And then if residents could submit their address to Huber Heights website to provide like a drive-by list, and people could stay in their cars and drive by and see the lights. I think that'd be a nice socially distant activity.
Comments. So I like ideas. I like ideas, no doubt.
Okay. Is there any way we could have children are used to submitting their homework by submitting it electronically? Could they submit their letters to Santa automatically? Could that be set up?
Yeah, I think I'm sure it could, because I mean we get a separate web address or a website for people who to submit comments, even to a prior to a city council meeting if they want to make public commentary. So I can't imagine we wouldn't be able to get an extension off the website.
In lieu of Santa being at the tree lighting, people would still have access to Santa because it's very, very important to a lot of our small residents.
Yep. We could absolutely make sure that letters that were sent, they could send electronically, and we'd make sure Santa got them. Absolutely.
Yep. And the other thing is there any way we could put Santa in a window with a microphone and the children could at least walk by or come by and say hi and have like a walking parade in front of Santa? I don't know if that's allowed in this COVID age.
So
I don't know.
I think possibly. So those are all great ideas, Kate. I think what we need to do. So let's go back here just 1 second. I think that when we talk about a modified event, so I think that even where we're at now with a level 3, if council is fully supportive of a modified event, I think that needs to be the plan moving forward. If we're going to do something, even with where we are at a level 3, we need to have some type of modifications. And Nancy, to your point, I appreciate you making the point. I do think that even though we're at a level 3 now, the level 3 we're at now is different than the level 3 we were earlier in the summer. I think that the number of cases have risen. I think even though we might feel like it's still going on and maybe either not as bad because we're still at a level 3, it wasn't as bad 4 or 5 months ago. So I appreciate you making that point, Nancy. I do think that it is worse now. When that's not me thinking, we all see the evidence. We know that it's worse now than it was. So I think if all of council was supportive of an event during a level 3, then it does need to be modified. And I think maybe some of the ideas that Kate had were some good ideas about how that event may be modified. But I think moving forward, I would say this. I think next week, if this trend continues, we're going to find that Montgomery County is a purple community. And then for me at that point, it would be all bets off. Mr. Schomer?
Well, I had a few more items. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you, Mayor. And then also lighting, make sure our city buildings are lit up, the police station, the fire station, at least something put out front. So they, again, going with the drive-by and everybody stay in their car ideas. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Yeah. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Thank you. Mr. Schomer and I had a conversation about lighting up City Hall, actually at the Veterans Memorial, at our Veterans Day ceremony. And I think, yes, so we're certainly going to make sure that City Hall has some lights and things like that so as part of the center of the city. I know if we're asking businesses and homeowners and things to kind of light up their houses and decorate, then certainly City Hall can lead by example, and we can have some lights up there. And Mr. Schomer agreed, so I think he's going to make sure that happens for us. I'm going to go. Mrs. Birch has her hand raised, and then we'll go. Or actually, I apologize. I want to give Mr. Schomer a chance. He's had his hand up. Then we'll go to Ms. Birch, and then we'll go back to Mr. Hill. Mr. Schomer. Good point. And I think, the times I've been to the farmer's market, I think a lot of the people that go there are repeat customers. And I think they kind of know the drill, right? So, and we actively have Sarah and Josh, and I've seen Vince King out there at several of those farmers markets. So I think people who've come to the farmers market, they depend on it. They know it's the last one, but there are a lot of repeat customers, and they know the drill. They know the social distancing. They know the lines, how they go in and come back out. So I think that would probably be okay to wrap up and keep doing that this weekend. Okay, thanks, Rob. Ms. Birch, you're muted, Nancy.
With respect to the farmers market, we've been really fortunate. I don't think we've had one rainy Saturday, so it's been a real good success. And I commend the staff for everything that they've done to make that happen. The question that I had is, Rob, if we wait until Monday to make a decision on this, so we have a better feel for where we are as far as the count within the county, are there any contracts that you have pending that might be adversely affected? You're on mute.
Rob, you're muted.
Okay, thank you.
So it'll be a week from today, right, when we have the new numbers in terms of the, because Thursdays are Mr. DeWine's days that he goes over the number. So it'll be next Thursday when we find out if we have moved or advanced to that purple level. Is that correct?
Yes, but we'll see the trend.
Sure. If we know we're up to, if we do hit the 10,000 case numbers, then I think we would have enough information to make a common sense call about how that event would or wouldn't move forward. Mr. Hill?
Thank you. I just wanted to say to Mr. Shaw that I apologize for my misunderstanding of his statement. I really appreciate the clarification there. That's all.
Thanks, Mr. Hill. Mr. Webb?
Thank you, Mayor. Rob, in your email to us, you mentioned events, and you've talked about the tree lighting and the farmers market. Is there anything else on the calendar that I'm not thinking of? Hmm. Okay, thank you. That's it, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, so does anybody have any objections into at least maybe getting back from Rob to see if there are any outstanding contracts or anything that we have already promised money to that may come back? But even, the can't imagine that being that expensive to where we would be in a situation where we would be willing to advance an event because of some money, if we realize that those trends are really heading in a more negative direction than they already are. So I think I'd like to see what happens between tomorrow over the weekend and then Monday, Monday's meeting, kind of get an update as to where we are. And then I think deciding then how soon we could modify that event if the numbers weren't as bad, or if we didn't move into the purple category by Thursday. And then I think if we have, and I've said this before, if we do move into that purple category as Montgomery County, then at that point, I think then cancellation is the right thing to do. Mr. Schomer?
Yes, I just was informed. Thank you, Mr. Fakowski, who's out there watching and listening. The only thing that we might not get back right now would be the Santa suit rental fee, and the rest of the contracts can wait. So there would be the answer to that question.
I don't think the Santa suit rental fee is going to break us to the point of putting on the event when it's when it wouldn't be prudent to do so.
I hope not.
All right, thanks.
And I did have.
Let's see. Is there Ms. Bird? Do you have your hand raised again?
Yeah, I did. A quick question on Monday, Rob. Can we have an idea of if we're going to modify it? How we would modify it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we'll take a look at that. Talk with staff tomorrow and make any adjustments regarding some of the, obviously nobody's going to come sit on Santa's lap, and we'll address it accordingly.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Ms. Baker, if you would, those are some great ideas that you had. Would you mind shooting Mr. Schomer an email, just kind of what some of your ideas were onto the city manager, just so he can have that as they have their staff meeting, they can kind of take some of those things into consideration. I'd appreciate that.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We've had a lot of conversation regarding the Christmas tree event. I would just ask the city manager if he has enough direction or policy lead regarding the curfew and how Huber Heights will enforce that.
Well, I can answer that. To be honest, in my email that I sent to regarding it, there's some ambiguity in what that order is, and there's so many excuses and reasons that somebody could be out even past the noted curfew, and some of the answers given when questioned about certain plays and applications were left kind of, well, no, that'd be okay as well. So with that much ambiguity, I'm not sure if we would want to really risk a stop and seizure on someone, and we would address it in a complaint-based forum where, like when there was a stay-at-home order and when there was a lack of gathering at homes, if there appeared to be an issue, that we would address it. But just the common citizen that would be out and conducting perhaps their business, going to get some takeout food, coming home from work, going to the grocery store, doing all those things that are permitted uses, there's really no reason for us to go out and attempt to identify why people are out at 10 o'clock. I certainly, as a public safety director, would not advocate that. I think that potentially poses a liability risk to the city unless we have real good probable cause that the individuals out would be out in direct violation of the order. And I think the parameters of that would be hard to meet by just general observance of people out.
Thank you. I know I've had that question posed to me, and I know there's been a lot of communications on various social media platforms, and I agree. The conversation was all over the place when asked by a lot of different people. And please correct me if I'm wrong, I don't even think the actual signed orders have even been released, even though it goes in effect tonight.
I didn't look
Because-
for it later this afternoon, but yesterday I was looking for one and didn't see one. Correct.
Yeah, I know this afternoon I didn't see one. I know OML has not sent that communication out as they typically do. So it's very difficult for a community to even really know what to look for or what to enforce when we don't have anything.
I think there's some solid guidelines in the current Department of Health advice, and if we run into situations where there are gatherings of people or collecting in a parking lot or whatever it might be, obviously those are the type of things. But if somebody is isolated by themselves driving in a car, that in and of itself doesn't pose a risk in accordance to the order. So I think our community can rest easy that our police are not going to go out and act as a police state and prevent people from doing things that are allowed within the prospects of that order.
I appreciate the communication. Thank you.
Rob, so
Yep.
just another point of discussion here. I'm not sure if you've had, well, I mean, I'm sure you have thought about this, but you guys did a really good job posting all of our signage and on city buildings and kind of letting people know those 3 different alert levels that we had basically as a city.
Mm-hmm.
So if it comes down to, so the reason I bring this up tonight is we have a meeting on Monday, but then we wouldn't meet again until the following Tuesday, I guess. That purple level possibly would come out between the time of our council meeting and then a following work session. I know that the city of Dayton took a pretty bold move where they closed down all of their city buildings and their customer counters, so they've eliminated any personal one-on-one contact in the city of Dayton already. If we do find out that we have advanced to that level 4 emergency, if you don't have the answer now, that's fine, but certainly be thinking about what our rules or where we would fall on that alert level of whether or not we would have, water department open, tax division open, people coming into City Hall, permitting, all those things, any interactions face-to-face that people would normally have with any city employee. I think we probably need to start at least thinking about what might happen if we advance into that level 4.
Yeah, yes, absolutely, and I would assume that we would follow the same definition that we had before and classify ourselves as an office environment. And based on the orders of the state, if office environments have, closed lobbies, et cetera, like they had earlier in the year, then we would follow suit. Because we think of ourselves as no different than any other business in the city that would be required to be open and provide services. In fact, in my opinion, we need to look at it maybe a little bit at a higher level because, there are taxpayer dollars that are associated to providing those services, and to just, close down when other businesses are still remaining open. We would fall ourselves in line with what the direction of the like and similar business would be. So if going to purple means that we fall back into some of those restrictions that were in the original order issued from March, April-ish, then absolutely we're prepared to go back into that active status. And, we would still continue providing all services as we did before. We would just remove any type of actual personal preference. So we're prepared to do that if that's what the orders call for. We've been there and done it before. It was pretty seamless and smooth, and we'll be prepared to do that again.
Perfect. Yeah, since nobody's been purple yet, except for today, I just don't know there's been any regulations that anybody has seen what an actual status of all of businesses and city offices would be inside of a purple county, because we haven't had any yet up until today. So,
yeah, you got to look at those industry definitions within the order, and we have typically fallen into that small office environment based on that. And then you can go deeper and find that there's exemptions for government. So, but we try to follow and set the example of what somebody like and similar in operations that we would do.
Okay. All right. Thanks a bunch. I appreciate it.
Yep.
I know you're on top of that and appreciate the work that you've done. So.
And I did have one other item if we're done with that one regarding the manager's update.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any other hands raised. So first of all, just thanks to everybody for that discussion. I think it was great. I appreciate everyone's input, and I think we have directions going forward. Mr. Schomer, if you'd hold up just 1 second. Yep. Mrs. Burgess just raised her hand. I think she might have one more comment before we move forward. Nancy?
Yeah, I do. I think that I read today that our positivity rate was 13, and I think the trigger point is 15 when we go purple. So that may be an indicator even before we get the formal announcement. Just as
Okay.
a point.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Birch. Good information. Okay, so before I'm just going to look. I don't see any of the hands raised. So I'm going to assume there's no other questions or comments regarding the events. I think we've had a great discussion about that. So we'll move forward, Mr. Schomer. Anything else from your report?
Yes, I had one more thing. There was a young lady named Michaela Olerts. She's attending kindergarten in a K through 12 online school here within the community, and one of the things that she was assigned to do was to create a map of her city, and she has done so. Her mom has submitted that to us and asked that we share it. So I would like to display that and show that. I think it's very commendable work. So let me.
And what grade level? Do we know what grade was she in again?
Kindergarten.
Kindergarten.
Yes.
I can't wait to see this.
Yes. And as soon as my screen allows me to share it. Well, I will make one more attempt here and then we will move on. I think I know why. Give me just a second.
No problem. How are you, sir?
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. I hope everybody's doing well.
Yes. Thank you.
As you remember, earlier in the year, Battalion Chief Keith Nisley had acquired a grant from Homeland Security in the amount of $243,000 for the purchase and installation of power-assisted cots for each ambulance, and included in that was a loading system. By the requirements of the grant, we had to put out a request for proposals, and we had one vendor respond, which is the vendor that we assumed would have responded anyway. So we have no objection to awarding the contract. So tonight's ask is to allow the city manager to award the contract to a company called Stryker. The cost of the power cots and loading systems came to $219,697.50. The remaining money in the grant that we received will be used. We had to pay for the installation of the load system, so that will be used over the remaining portion of that. And if there is any money left over in the grant at the end of this project, we can petition FEMA to allow us to use that funding for other needed equipments, but we need to get through this process first. So we will try to use every dime we possibly can out of that grant. But again, like I said earlier, tonight's ask is to allow the city manager to award the contract to Stryker. It's about a 10-week process by the time we order and get the equipment in and then get them installed. And if you're not familiar with a power cot, the crews will not have to pick up a patient while on the cot manually, and also the system has a cantilevered loading system that they will not have to physically pick the cot and the patient up to put them in the back of the ambulance. The system does it all. This will help reduce numerous injuries, back strains, and strains.
Great. That's awesome news. Glad we're ready to get those things going and installed. And great job to Battalion Chief Nisley again for all the money that he's brought into the fire division over the years in the forms of these grants. Any objections to moving this on to Monday evening for the council meeting? Okay, thank you so much. We'll see it. Thank you, Chief.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you, council.
Thanks.
Next up is item 3C, which is the 2021 annual legislation. The first piece of that is the Public Works Division on different various goods and services from them. Mr. Schomer.
Yes, as you see in the agenda packet, that's exactly what it is. If you recall, towards the end of each year, we go through a series of pieces of legislation. We actually used to do each one of these listed as individual pieces of legislation, but over the last couple of years, we've, and thank you, Council, for that. We were able to combine into one so that we don't have a 3-hour-long meeting going through reading all of these. But what these are basically the items that we know starting January 1, we're going to establish encumbrances for, or purchase orders to be able to begin the process of operations for the city in 2021. So you see in this one, we've got road salt, de-icing, tree services, diesel fuel, gasoline, etc. All those things that we know. And what we do, and the reason why it is noted as waiving the competitive bid, is that all of these particular items we buy off of the current state bid schedule. So that is why that is listed there. And the assigned amounts are the amounts that we are asking and not to exceed regarding those particular items. So we ask that the resolution be considered this evening for adoption.
Thanks, Mr. Schomer. Are there any questions or comments for Rob on the public works purchases? Okay, so then we have the second piece to that is the various departments and divisions through other various vendors. Those comments the same, or do you have additional comments, Rob?
Comments are the exact same. The reason that the waiving of competitive bidding requirements here is because all of these particular items are either of special skills knowledge or proprietary knowledge, and or sole source. So, for instance, leases, the auditors, people who we get special equipment from. That's what this list is, and the established respective not to exceed costs. So we also ask this one is considered this evening for adoption.
Appreciate it, Rob. Are there any other questions or any objections to moving this on to Monday? Okay, hearing none, seeing none, that's where we'll move. Next up is item 3D, which is our supplemental appropriations. Mr. Bell?
If I can jump in real quick before Jim goes, I just want to I just want to make special attention and notice on a couple of things. In the packet, you see that we have the supplemental, and I want to make a distinct notice of a couple of items in our recreation department. Obviously, I'm going to start real quick with the Rose Music Center. Not having a season this year, obviously, are counted on revenue. But if you see there, we have, in my opinion, a very low, very efficiently managed cost through all the way up to almost the last minute. We were still trying to promote, advertise, and be prepared for concerts. Obviously, there's a lot of work that goes into that. Our great partner with Mimi, when we look at that item right there and that number, we've not yet applied the sponsorship money from the naming rights sponsor, Stuart and Mimi Rose Foundation. So I think that if we take a look at that and some of the items that we were able to cost off to the CARES Act with the installation of the touchless features, even though we didn't have any performances, I think the impact, considering our great success years past, this is a blip on the radar. Speaking of that as well, we can judge and rate things as to what's going to happen next year a lot of times by what people have confidence in. Me and Mr. Campbell were talking last week or so, and we're just talking generally about consumer confidence and things in the economy and stock markets, etc. Live Nation obviously is a well-known concert promoter, right? Well, Live Nation is a publicly traded company, and if you take a look at their stock chart or the price of their stocks pre, mid, and post COVID, and then where we are now, they went from about a $70 stock and they plummeted down to about a $20 stock. Well, with the release of the information, including the information on the possibility, the actuality of a vaccine, people have started reinvesting knowing that there's a 2020 season for entertainment coming. And that stock price is back up to what its normal price is. What does that mean? I think that means that if people are willing to have the confidence to invest and know that their investment is going to return well, then that means that there's a lot of confidence that the efforts being made in the performance in the entertainment industry is pretty solid. So I feel very confident that there's two things: this, and then the subsequent discussion about the budget regarding our projected revenue is really going to change. So I really think that that's a really good story. The next one, going into the Aquatic Center. We noticed that the Aquatic Center had a difference in technically what did it cost the city to operate the Aquatic Center this year. It cost $81,000. I know last week you saw a document that had 91. There were some expenditures in there that we had already covered. And as we go through, as we always do, and finalize and account and reconcile all of our expenses between now and the rest of the year to close out 2021, there's some adjustments. So we found that there was some some maintenance and other related stuff that was already covered out of that. The overall cost to operate the Aquatic Center, if anybody has any guesses, I'll tell you, this year was about $538,000. So out of $538,000, if the only thing that we have to cover is 81, I think that's a pretty darn good bargain for the residents, especially considering some of the differences in operational costs for some of the investments we make in the parks, some of the investments like the new playground equipment in Belle Plaine Park, the operation, cutting grass, painting, doing things at Tom Cloud, etc., where there isn't a generated revenue stream. So the cost of a facility that big and that attractive to only cost that much, I think that the residents are getting a pretty good bargain, and I know for a fact that the residents enjoyed having the opportunity to go to that facility this summer. So even though it looks like somebody could probably put a negative spin and say, hey, we lost money. No, I'm not sure we did. It cost $538,000 to operate it, and we just need to cover the difference of $81,000. That's a pretty good investment, and I bet our taxpayers and our residents would allow us to take that gamble and make that bet every year for their benefit. Other than that, I just wanted to touch on those two things because those are kind of large-scale amenities and almost separate business operations within the city. And I just wanted to make sure to give it its due attention and notice before Jim talked about the rest of all of the things in the supplemental. So I'll turn it over to him.
Rob, I appreciate you saying that and kind of bringing that up. So, because I do believe the same thing. I do believe our residents and lots of people, even non-residents, were extremely happy. The rules we had about resident days and things like that, the Aquatic Center over the course of the summer, I think worked really well. People were happy, and I couldn't agree more. So, thanks for that update, Mr. Bell.
Yes, quite a few things to go over. It's a very busy week in finance this week. The note proceeds, note sales were yesterday for all the land purchases and property purchases. I'm sorry, and the Friday will be the lease will be finalized for the energy efficiencies improvement project, which will be going on for the majority of next year. And those are on here. You might remember back in March when Marion Meadows was purchased, that there was an advance from general fund to the Transformative Economic Development Fund. Now that we have the notes done, we're going to reimburse that advance. So that $2,602,000 is going to go back to the general fund balance. We've also got, I wanted to put in here advance funding for the Veterans Memorial. I wanted to make sure that, I know bids are going out soon, so this allows for, we started with 200,000, and I'd like to bump that up to $1 million. So that's why that's here. Obviously, council's on board with going forward with that. And I wanted to make sure, in case there were any expenses that happened before the end of the year, that we at least had some budget to work off of. And then I've got additional money in the budget for next year in case that the bids come in larger than $1 million. The next item, $220,928.32. You just heard from Chief Ashworth. This is the FEMA portion, the grant portion of those power cuts. So I need to budget that when that FEMA money comes in, that money will be transferred from the FEMA fund over to the Fire Capital Fund. And later at the bottom, you'll see the $243,021.15. That's for the power cuts. I have to expense the whole amount out of the Fire Capital Fund, and then that reimbursement will come back to them when that FEMA grant money is received. The next item is $3 million, as I mentioned, for the Energy Efficiencies Improvement Project. That capital lease will be go into an escrow account. So I'm going to record that as like a memo revenue, and then there'll also be expenses for that project. And so that way we can get a PO, start working on those items as they come up. I think some items are already getting started, and there'll be a lot going on next year. Rob already mentioned the differences for the Aquatic Center and the Music Center, and those are the next three items. And then the item under that, $398, it's a decrease to the Coronavirus Relief Fund. Actually, I had budgeted, they told us at the beginning of this for the CARES Act money that I needed to budget for not only the CARES money that came in, but my estimate as to how much interest we would earn on that money. I estimated $500. We're right now the interest has been $102. So I need to reduce the budget, to ask council to reduce the budget by $398 to match the CARES Act money plus the interest earned on that money. So that's why there's a reduction to that. And the due date is tomorrow for all of the expenses being turned in to the finance portal from Office of Budget and Management. And I've been told that if there is money, we've spent all of the money that's been given to us. If there's any money available, that should come back out to us from Montgomery County on the 25th. So that's a quick turnaround for their part. So I appreciate that. So we've done everything we can. If there's any additional monies to be redistributed, I will let each of you know that through Rob. The next item, $7,400, is for the ODOT smooth seal coat. This was an ODOT paving project. They asked us to pay, I forget, it's either 10% or 20% of that cost. And when the final cost came in on that, the initial amount that we paid in was not quite enough. So they're asking for an additional $7,400. So that needs to be an increase to the budget, was not anticipated. The final item, $5,234,172, is for the various property related purchases and additional expenses associated with that. And as I said, that is covered by the note proceeds that were just received yesterday. And I would ask that all of these be approved on Monday, if you could. So some of these expenses could and purchase orders could start to be obtained.
Thanks, Jim. Appreciate that. I know that was a lot to go through, and certainly I would add, yes, the finance department has certainly been busy this year. And as we're going through some of those things, just kind of talking about them, as my memory goes back, I reflect on when I think about how much we've actually got accomplished this year, as we're kind of getting down toward the end of the year, how much we got accomplished this year under the circumstances that they've been accomplished in. I think the efficiency and the work that staff has done and what this council has taken into consideration and approved, I think as we move into 2021, I think we're going to be able to look back at 2020 and find that it was probably one of our most productive years based on what we've done and how we're going to be able to move forward. So thanks for all the great work. If there's, I see Mr. Webb and Mr. Otto, Mr. Campbell, and some others have their hands raised. So we may have some questions. So we'll see where this goes. Mr. Webb, you had your hand raised first. If you'd like to comment, please.
Thank you, Mayor. This is just a comment to Jim. In reading the read-ahead material you provided, the way you've got it listed out, very clean, easy to understand, and I just wanted to compliment you and your staff on the work you've done. It's very easy to understand, and I think any of our residents who would read this could easily see what the changes are in the budget. The numbers are clean. It's a great job. I can't say enough about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Webb. I'll go to Mr. Otto and then to Mr. Campbell.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. I don't know who it would go to, but just curious, how did we get to the $1 million number for the Veterans Memorial?
Sure. In case the council's not aware, through the, I think it's been mentioned in the OML bulletins that come out on Fridays, that we will be receiving a third BWC premium refund this year. We've already received one for all of the premiums that we paid in for 2018 and for 2019. And so since those have all been redistributed to the individual funds where the workers are paid out of, this third refund, which is supposed to be 3.72 times the last refund, estimated to be over $800,000 coming into the city. The auditor of state has ruled that we can put that into the general fund, all of the proceeds, because it's not a direct refund of premiums already paid. It's additional money that the state is reimbursing to all employers, both public and private. So definitely want to put that into the general fund, and so that allows us to increase what was a budget of $200,000 for expenses this year for the Veterans Memorial Project, increase that to $1 million without any true increase to the general fund budget, because we will be getting $800,000 at least of revenue that we did not anticipate.
Yeah, that is great news, Jim. That is great news. Mr. Campbell.
Jim Bell, this is a personal comment. I want to take the opportunity to let you know that your hard work and your dedication doesn't go unnoticed, and how lucky the city is having you as our finance director.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I appreciate that. Have a great staff.
You certainly do, and they're guided by a great man, and we're very lucky.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
I would echo those comments. Great job, Jim. Okay, any other questions before we move forward, or before I, yes. Oh, no, okay, so Mark, you finished. Any other questions or comments, or any objections to moving these supplementals on to Monday's council meeting? Hearing none, seeing none, we'll move those on to Monday. Next up is item 3E, which is the CARES Act expense declaration. Mr. Bell, is that you again as well?
Yes, it is. As I mentioned, part of the supplemental was to reduce the CARES Act expenses that I had previously asked to budget for by $398. What this is, and this is the second time we've done this, I wanted to wait until this meeting so that way all of the expenses can be given to you and you can declare them as necessary. This has been recommended by the state as an additional way to prove that the council is behind all of the expenses, and this resolution declares them all as necessary for our fighting the prevention of the coronavirus spread. And as you know, we've purchased a number of things. There is still $83,454 that has not been check written for, but that is our project that we've got with the touchless features. And they're working hard to get those all complete by the end of December. The rules for use of this money is by tomorrow's date, we had to have everything either spent or encumbered for a project that is to be completed before the end of the year. And we've met that deadline, and this legislation just takes the legislative body to say, hey, we're behind this, we approve this, and it should help during our audit next year when they come in to audit the use of these funds of over $2.2 million.
Perfect, thank you, Jim. Are there any questions or any objections to moving this on to Monday as well?
Jim, you should mention that there's the amended Exhibit A that was distributed to council, and that will be the one they'll be approving, not the original one that was in the packet.
Yes, yes. I did have an amendment that came out late today. And one of the, in transferring the monies for the police and fire payroll, I had actually transferred up to that $500 interest income level. And so that's the reason why I had to amend what you're approving tonight for the actual expenses. I backed off that $398 of the transfer. So that was done earlier today. and had to submit it to you as an amended version. So I apologize that had to amend yet again when I submitted to you on Tuesday.
Not to worry. Any objections? Okay, we'll move that on to Monday as well. Next is item 3F, which is the county assessment authorization.
Yes, that would be under my domain as well. Mayor and council members, as you know, I come to you about 3 or 4 times a year with assessments that need to be sent to the county. And the ones I've got before you tonight are attached in Exhibit A. And this is primarily for grass and weeds, people that the city took care of that. They were notified. The city already went to the expense of paying for those to be done. There's just a few other items, 1 property maintenance and 4 trash and litter assessments that need to be done. And I would ask that you approve this. We'd have to suspend the rules and approve this on Monday night so we can get this to the county in good time so they can get this assessed for next year's property taxes.
Thanks, Mr. Bell. Mr. Shaw, question?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jim or Rob, could you clarify exactly what county public entity has requested us to do this? I know other communities have to do it as well. Do you know where that direction initially came from?
County auditor, I believe, Jim, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
We submit everything like this to the county auditor. Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Any objections? Not that Mr. Shaw had an objection, but any objections to moving forward? Okay, seeing and hearing none, we'll move those assessments on to Monday's meeting. And next we'll move on to item 3G, which is the diversity needs assessment. The Culture and Diversity Citizens Action Commission has been talking, and it was one of the items they've discussed over the last couple meetings that they would appreciate and like a needs assessment kind of from the community to see some items that they should be spending some time on and focusing on. So I would just move this over to Rob if there's any other thing you'd like to add or kind of what this process might look like, so we can help get some direction from council on this commission as well.
Sure. Yeah, it's pretty big. We just want to explore what options would be involved in a needs assessment, which will include staff going out and finding those options, hearing the building blocks of what the Diversity Commission would like to see within that, and then also as council. So I know Katie's, I believe, on the call. She's the staff liaison that's been working with the Diversity Commission. So if she'd like to jump in, I'd.
Hi, Katie.
Yes. Hi, thank you.
There she is.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So yes, the Diversity Commission over the last couple months, they've been talking about this. They've been trying to discuss priorities of what they're looking for, and this is one of the top priorities they're looking at. So they'd like to do a needs assessment that would survey the community to help gauge how the community feels about diversity and inclusion throughout the city, and maybe will help determine what needs, if any, could possibly be addressed or to make any improvements upon. So we would just like to bring this to council this evening to request the authority to help identify those necessary funds and to budget those items accordingly. The committees, they've broke out into committees, and all the committees will be talking about the items they want to be looking at. So as I get those items and we get more information, we certainly will bring those items back. But right now, I think it's more of getting the authority to identify those necessary funds so we can budget those accordingly.
Thanks, Katie. Mr. Shaw, do you have a question?
Yes, just a bit of clarification. I do know that initially when this commission was formed, there was some conversation on a community-wide survey. Is this incorporated into that?
Actually, we're going to have kind of a multitude of things going on in 2021. We had planned with our community engagement coordinator, obviously Sarah, and had going into 2021. We had already known even before the Diversity Commission was formed that 2021 was a year that we were going to assemble a general community thing, finding out things like, do you feel safe? All those type of things that is necessary for us to be able to gauge our delivery of services and see what impacts we need to make. We also have upcoming a survey, as discussed previously, regarding the single trash hauler program and ordinance that the city has. In this particular project would be something that is a little bit more specific as well, directed around culture and diversity related needs within the community. So, the ask is really to be able to begin the process of seeking out a firm or consultant and get some proposals to see what an expert in the field would suggest that we do in order to accommodate seeking out what those needs are. Of course, one of the stakeholders and main contributors to that being our own Cultural and Diversity Commission, but utilizing the industry standard and best practice tools to engage that. So it wouldn't be necessarily incorporated into that general community survey. This one we saw as more of a targeted, specific, direct thing, deserving of its own process for the ability to identify a whole list of priorities. So much more complex. If that
We're just going to wrap it all into one.
Rather than wrapping it all into one, yes, because if you wrap it all into one, I think that you lose importance and things get missed. And quite frankly, people would not give it as much attention. We envision, and I would imagine a firm is going to recommend something in addition to just a survey, perhaps focus groups, perhaps some community meetings and activities. Much like if you imagine the Brant Pike Revitalization Study, although that was far more comprehensive than a diversity and culture needs assessment involving many other layers. But the process that was used to identify that final report is basically what we envision a firm or a professional would recommend. So we need to get out there and ask some of them to see what the best approach to that would be. But we felt the Diversity Commission certainly wants to put it on their priority list, and they continue to work on that. But in order to make sure that that's something they're going to continue working on, we wanted to make sure to have the authority to bring back some proposals to establish the funding that would be needed going into 2021 for that particular action.
Perfect. Mayor, my last point is, and I'm sure we're doing this, I would just like to get clarification with Ms. Nisley here being the staff liaison, that all of the resources that we have with Jobs Ohio, Dayton Development Coalition, a lot of specialty resources within the area that this community and the city is a part of, that do offer some assistance. We are providing that and reaching out to our partners to see what options are available that we can do in-house or with our partners, correct?
That is certainly something we will look at, yes.
Excellent, okay. Because that would be, as just one council member, that would be my suggested first step. Instead of going out and hiring an outside firm, let's see what we can do. Let's partner. Let's think outside the box with those individuals that we have available to us in the region that know our region, our individuals, and share a lot of our commonalities. And then if at that point we are still at a stalemate, we're not getting valid information, then I think at that point we look outside the box. That's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, those are certainly items we can look into as we go through this.
Thank you.
We'll go to Mr. Otto and then to Ms. Birch.
Thank you, Mayor. I just had a quick question. As many of you know, that I like to follow along with all the committee meetings, commission meetings, and whatnot. And since we don't have them in person now, which I'd prefer to attend, but they're all remote now. We've had some video issues and whatnot. I still want to follow along with things that are going on, and I've noticed with this particular commission, let me note first of all, I have no issue with surveying our community and public to see, what their thoughts and views are. But I would like to know what is, the discussion is behind these actions, and it would be nice if we could get those, if we have videos of those meetings or whatever, we could get those posted for review or, be able to, to watch those and participate within those meetings.
Well, I know that they all are produced, the committee meetings that they have. The link.hhoh.org/remote meeting link is published as part of the meeting announcements. And anybody would be able to click that Teams link and monitor and view and participate in those subcommittee meetings. The actual commission meetings are live streamed like any other commission meeting that we would have. The recordings of the subcommittee meeting, we are in the process. We do have them. They're large files, let's just say that. So we're in the process of finding a way to get those posted. Swagit does all of our other recordings, so we've got those. We're trying to get those posted onto Agenda Quick as an attachment. So that's a work in progress, but we do have them, and we do intend to have. We'll catch up with getting them posted, and that commission is very active. We can hardly keep up with getting one meeting posted, and they have announced an agenda for another. So trying to keep up with the management of keeping the back end of the open meetings part of that commission. So all the tools are in place. We've just got to get it assembled into that common area of Agenda Quick where people click, look at a thing, and find a video. But if somebody needs a copy of a video or something, we would be able to provide it on thumb drive right now. We're just trying to get those uploaded and streamed onto the same system that we use, the Swagit and Agenda Quick.
Okay. I appreciate it. Like I said, it's just a matter of understanding why decisions are going the way they are, why requests are going the way they are. It just fills in blanks and makes things a lot easier.
Understood and agree.
Yeah, thank you.
Ms. Birch?
Yes, Katie, I don't know if you're aware, Miami Valley Regional Planning Commission just hired a gentleman who comes from Washington, D.C., who is an expert in equity and diversity issues. And that's one of the main reasons they brought him here to the Miami Valley, is to help the communities around here who are trying to do exactly what our commission is trying to do. So I believe the guy's name is Carlton Ely, but I will get that information to you. And since it's with MVRPC, there should be no charge to us, but he might be able to give some really good guidance on the best way to approach this and what areas to focus on.
Okay, yeah, that could be a good resource. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Birch, for bringing that up. Okay, so are there any objections to moving this on to Monday, where staff will have look to appropriate the funding and things to do what we need to do to make sure we get the need assessment completed, to work on that? Or is this something that would move on? Are we going to looking at any other sources, or maybe as Mrs. Bird said, or is this something staff's recommending that we go ahead and at least this portion take care of so we can move forward with that?
Yeah, I'm not sure what the legislation would be after this discussion, which is great. We had thought about the MVRPC, and we'll tap into that. We may have legislation that at least authorizes, if necessary, to at least send out an RFP to seek proposals. That doesn't really cost us anything yet. And I think as far as identifying what the budget might be, I think we wait to see until we get some of those proposals and information back before we identify that. But we may have a resolution for Monday that would authorize, doesn't mean that it would go out right away, but at least authorize us to begin that process.
Okay, thanks. Right. So I do know, one of the things we talked about, so some of our other boards and commissions have funding, they have budgets and like A and B. So I think when we look at, when we talked about the original creation of the Diversity Commission, they were going to want to put on some events. I think they were going to take on kind of the cultural festival. Now, over the course of the summer and with COVID, a lot of those things haven't been able to happen. But as we move forward into 2021 and the more active that they get, the types of things they want to do, I think council needs to be considering what type of funding or budget we'd be prepared to allocate for this commission, the same as we do A and B and things like that, because they do bring things to the city and they put on events. And I think we need to take all that into consideration and consider the same thing for this commission. So we'll be thinking about that as well, and staff will see what kind of recommendation comes back as we look at what some of the needs are. I think the needs would help determine what type of a budget that we would get established for the commission. So,
Great.
Any other questions or comments? So, Rob, can we just expect then maybe the RFP type legislation for Monday's meeting regarding this, but nothing more specific than that than the RFP?
Yeah, exactly. We would need to just take a look at what proposals come back. So before we see what would be involved. Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that takes us on to item 3H, which is the Montgomery County TIF District Extension. Anytime we talk about tax increment financing in the city, so far I have been recusing myself from these portions of the meetings. I've talked to Mr. McDonald, and although not a huge issue here, just to stay consistent with how I've done things before, I will move on and let Mrs. Burge handle this particular item. And I see Mr. Sikowski, our Assistant City Manager, on here as well. So I'm assuming he's going to probably lead that discussion. But at least from this point, I will remain out of the discussion at this point. So Ms. Burge, if you would.
Yes, I will. Thank you. Once again, item H, Montgomery County TIP District Extension. Mr. Falkowski.
Yes, ma'am. So the General Assembly has put in place an opportunity for it's. Hey, one ski, two ski. We all know the language you're speaking. The General Assembly has put in place an opportunity for jurisdictions who have tax increment financing in place to extend the legislation or to extend those districts, provided that the districts meet certain requirements. And in this particular instance, one of our districts does meet the requirements for extension, and that is the Montgomery County TIF district. And so we're asking council to entertain legislation to extend that TIF. And so effectively, any property that is currently receiving the benefit of the TIF will be able to receive that benefit for another 30 years. And so we'll be able to continue to capture tax dollars that would otherwise go to different jurisdictions. We'll be able to capture those. What council would need to do is you would need to entertain this legislation in 2 readings at the next 2 respective council meetings. And we would ask you to entertain that legislation as an emergency measure, only for the purposes of vacating the referendum period at the end of the 2nd reading. There is an obligation under the law that any TIF extension be approved and in place prior to the end of this calendar year. So that would be the reason that we would ask for you to adopt this particular measure as an emergency. You'll notice in the packet we did include notification letters, copies of notification letters that will be sent to both the Huber Heights School District as well as to the Miami Valley career folks. So we'll send those out, assuming that tomorrow, assuming council would move this item forward. So they'll receive notice and they'll be given an ample opportunity to come before council and present any comments or concerns that they might have regarding this legislation prior to your entertaining the legislation for adoption. So with that, I'm more than happy to answer any questions, ma'am, that you or other members of council might have.
If I could supplement his comments real quick before any questions. You'll see later on in our one of our discussions the great success in establishing this funding source and a benefit to the community, and how successful that this Montgomery County TIF has been and what it's brought to the community. And coming across and seeing this opportunity, I think council has a great opportunity to further sustain financial success and stability and investment directly back into this community, utilizing this source. And that's the key thing, is making sure that the hard-earned dollars that our taxpayers pay go right back into our community. Was lucky enough to meet with a prospective new business looking at a few areas, and one of the particular things that he was most impressed about was the reinvestment and ability for us to capture and retain our own local dollars, and the desire and the and the culture set by this community of making sure to keep those dollars invested right back in itself. So, and I think the state has recognized that makes us competitive for additional jobs in the state, and we look at it in ways of three priorities. We want the jobs to our state, then we want the jobs to our region, and then we want the jobs in our community. And, because it's a win all the way. So I just wanted to supplement the comments with that this is such a great, exciting opportunity, and more importantly, we're going to have a lot to celebrate regarding the success of the decisions made previously about implementing the use of this TIF. So just wanted to throw that in.
Thank you, Rob. Mr. Campbell?
Brian?
Yes, sir.
Did I understand right that you're talking about an additional 30 years?
So this is sir, is the rolling TIF, and so the way that the legislation reads is that anyone who's currently receiving the benefit would be able to continue to receive the benefit. So in other words, anyone who's come off of the tax increment capture, we wouldn't be able to apply that new, but anyone who's currently on it, we would be able to extend. So I won't say that we would garner any new money from this extension, sir, but we would be able to capture additional monies in the future that we would not otherwise be able to capture based on this legislation.
And am I grasping the extent of this, and could it be millions of dollars?
It would be a continuation. So for instance, last year we collected approximately just over $1.5 million. So if we were to extend that legislation, so we could, in theory, expect to receive that amount continuously going forward, right, for the next 30-year period. Without this legislation, eventually that number would decrease over time because the captures would wear off after that 30-year period. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
45 million.
Yeah, so it's legitimately 30 more years based on a TIFT business building increment that currently exists.
Correct. Everyone who is receiving the TIF, who we are receiving the TIF benefit from, we would continue to receive that benefit based on this legislation for another 30 years based on where they are today.
And may I ask who ran across that? Who found this?
I want to say that bond counsel, attorney Chris Franzman, brought that to Mr. Bell's attention, and then Mr. Bell brought that to my attention. So it came in through bond counsel and into the right hands.
Rob, what do we spend annually on our interior streets program?
I don't know. Jim, do you know right off the top of your hand? I know we increased it for this year.
Yes.
By 400.
I think combined between curb, gutter, sidewalk, streets, about $2 million.
Okay. That sounds right.
And is this money, Brian, that you're talking about, obviously not encumbered yet by the city?
Correct, but from the standpoint that we haven't realized it. But
as we realize it, it's money that could be put back into public infrastructure?
Correct. Okay. So I think Mr. Brossert's going to give a presentation a little later in tonight's meeting. And one of the slides that he's going to demonstrate is the net indebtedness related to the current Montgomery County TIF fund. And when we get to that point in the presentation, the timing of the TIF revenues fall off about the same time as that debt service falls off. By passing this resolution, the revenues would continue at the same level in theory that they are at today, but there would now be no offsetting debt. So somewhere around, I think it's 2034, 2033, somewhere in there, we would effectively have $1.5 million of revenue generated from the Montgomery County TIF that has no corresponding expense tied to it. So that is when we would really truly realize this benefit.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Mr. Shaw, I think you were next.
Yes, thank you. Brian, just for those who may be watching, the Exhibit A, could you kind of go over that and explain that for folks who may watch this meeting later, and kind of the shades of blue, red, and green, just make sure we're all on the same page?
Sure. So when you're looking at the exhibit, we included several components to the exhibit, but one of those being the map that you're referencing. So in this particular instance, the TIF area that we're talking about is generally represented by the blue color of the map. That is the area of the Montgomery County TIF. The green portion on the northern end of this map is actually the collective Miami County TIF districts, which don't qualify for extension because they don't meet all of the requirements, only the Montgomery County TIF. And that is, again, that area in blue that's highlighted on the map that you have included in the packet. Corresponding parcels to that map are then also accompanied in the packet, are listed as an attachment as well as part of that exhibit.
Excellent, thank you. Because I noticed a couple of areas, kind of to Mr. Campbell's point, when it comes to infrastructure, is 201 and 202 in those particular areas. If this council, in my opinion, is looking at a TIF extension of roughly $45 million over the next 30 years, I think the magical question is why, and how is our residents going to benefit directly? We have additional areas. I believe in this map is included the TIF area down behind the North Park Plaza as well, which is behind I'm going to call it Gander Mountain, a former location there. And I know there was some previous discussion on some recreational use in that area, how we can partner with different organizations. And of course, we have the entire, business area along Executive. So I guess with this, extension is why and what is the true benefit to our community outside of just capturing those dollars that would, normally go to, schools, libraries, and, the mental health organizations.
I can jump in real quick. We've had this discussion, considering that, and Mr. Campbell actually just hit on it a little bit with our interior streets program and other things. If you look at the output of years, looking at once by about 2033-ish or so, you can imagine currently some of the infrastructure needs, and then by that time some of the infrastructure needs. So why would this money be needed? Well, what it is it's to reduce the burden on the taxpayer today. So as we would be able to look at more roads, more infrastructure that will by that time be even in more need of repair. Look within that district. One of the main projects associated in the county, in Montgomery County TIF right now, is the 202 and 201 interchanges. Right. So by that time moving forward, you can imagine there's probably going to be large-scale projects needed to be undertaken regarding, those intersections in and of themselves. So the answer is I've heard from many council members talk about the need for, not for lack of better words, a succession plan, but a structured plan, a phased-in approach to make sure that we can keep up with the needs of maintaining and replacing and improving our infrastructure, roads, bridges, water lines, streetscapes, all those things that fall in the realm of that. So, this is an opportunity to make sure that we establish ourselves in the future as some of the current project monies have run out. That's about the time that some of those major infrastructure projects are going to need, repaired or replaced. So it's a great funding source for something like that. And I think what this does is it ensures a possible funding source for our community in the future for those high priority infrastructure needs.
Correct. And to Mr. Schomer's comments, keep in mind that this legislation is an extension of the original ordinance, 03, I just pulled it up here. And so that particular, it's ordinance 2003 -0-1409 for everyone keeping score at home. And it's an extension of this particular legislation. And so the money that is being collected for the specific projects defined in that ordinance. So to Mr. Schomer's point, when you read that legislation, the money that would be extended through this project would be rededicated to those projects associated with 70, 202, 201, and the relative improvements that are defined within that piece of legislation. So just to be clear, that to the city manager's point, that this revenue that will be captured is money that we will have available for those improvements, and is not allows us to not have to seek additional funds to handle those long-term maintenance needs. So this is just a continuation of that revenue source, so that we can divert, or I should say, we could utilize our other more conventional revenue sources on projects that we need in a broader sense throughout the city.
And to follow up on that, Brian, if I may, and I appreciate the clarification on that previous ordinance. The monies are rededicated to those projects that are within that ordinance. So we can't create new projects. The funds are allocated for those projects to be extended or built upon it. Am I fair enough with that?
That I can't say. Yes, I would say that as a general statement, yes, that the money that's currently coming in would be relegated to those projects defined in the original ordinance. Yes.
So the 1.5 million that we have coming in, is that the 1.5 million that has gone through and been calculated, or is that still attached to the original dollars from the original ordinance?
So that 1.5 million that came in last year is associated with the current ordinance, not its extension. And that 1.5 million is going to pay for all of the various loan obligations we have for all of those improvements. So the SIB loans are in there, with regard to the interchange and the aesthetic improvements at those interchanges, and all of the subsequent infrastructure in and around that area that was paid for by the initial issuance of those loans from earlier.
And my last statement, which I believe I may have confused myself or may be incorrect, so I'm looking for personal clarification on this. If those dollar amounts are compared to the 2003 ordinance, would this extension not garner additional dollars outside of that with the current investments and the current ability? So we could possibly be looking at more than 45 million a year because of the investments that's been made in that area and the ongoing increase.
Sure. I mean, if the market, so if you think about all of the acreage that we own that is formerly that's formerly the Lehman property, and then you look at all that vacant acreage that is the Neubauer property, right? For instance, so if we see development on there, that's new investment on which we capture the increment. So yes, we would bring in more than 1.5 million, where we would bring in whatever the value of that is, whatever that ad is. So it's possible for us to make more than the 1.5 million. It's possible for us to make less than the 1.5 million. It all depends on what real assets exist within the district at the time for which we're capturing the increment. Based on what we know today, if we extrapolate going forward, it would be 1.5 million effectively over a continuous additional 30-year period. But that could go up, it could go down.
And the reason I say that is because those areas in blue have seen additional growth and investment since the 03 calculations were put into place by that ordinance. So theoretically speaking, if we're looking at property values and true investment, I would say that's increased a good 20%, if not higher, since 2003.
Correct. And if you were to look back at revenues that were garnered through that TIF district, you'll see that, in previous years when the district was, had less development in it, we were bringing in significantly smaller amounts of revenue. So Perfect. Again, now that there's been more investment, we're capturing more of the increment. If we have, so yes.
And Vice Mayor, my last question, which would be probably to Rob or to Brian. Please explain, and especially for those who may watch this video later, have some interest in this. Obviously, there's been a lot of discussion previously by this council when it comes to TIFs regarding their Career Center, Huber Heights City School Districts, and even Bethel School District when we discuss Miami County TIFs. Please explain the impact, current and future, if this passed, to those entities, and including the county organizations that would happen to receive this money as well.
Well, as far as the impact to them, what do you mean by impact?
Well, I guess there's been some previous discussion, on are they being made whole?
Oh, okay.
Is this, again, just re-clarifying that to the general public. I know we've had that conversation multiple times when it comes to TIF, but where are we at currently with that? Where, and then would that change in the future?
Well, the current agreements that are in the Montgomery County TIF have a planned agreement within the school district, and we have actually recently come upon the time where that 25-75 starts to flip and switch, where the TIF was front end loaded for the benefit for us taking the projects on, back end loaded for that makeup, and that structure remains, as I said. Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, but the extension already has built-in exclusions and percentages regarding schools, correct?
Yeah. So because we're extending the existing legislation, we would see the application of that. We would see that application depending upon again where they are. This would be the 75% up front, and then the 100% reimbursement to the school on the back end of that.
And although it's been of some dispute based on conversations between school finance folks and municipal finance folks, in all actuality, in a district where those tax dollars are within the TIF, it actually provides additional funding. Maybe not the payment of the schedule is the same, but it actually creates more money to provide back to the schools in that scenario.
Correct.
So how it would impact the schools, I think that anyone would say that the share of that additional revenue that was created based on the incentive of that TIF district that the school likely would not have realized, that the development may not have created, the impact is that they'll see more money.
And Rob, I appreciate that, because I believe, if memory serves correct, there was a joint school board and city council meeting where that conversation had come up. Correct. And I just wanted to, kind of provide clarification and additional insight to that, because there was some confusion to that. And hopefully, I know the request has been made, and hopefully we can meet together again soon, and definitely iron out some additional conversations along that same way to make sure everybody's on the same page.
Sure.
And Mr. Shaw, to that point, I do want to clarify. I do want to correct my comment earlier regarding the school's reimbursement. The extension does guarantee that the city provides 100% reimbursement. So once we get through that initial 10-year period under the legislation for that 25-75, the school is reimbursed for 100% of what they would normally have coming to them if no abatement or if no tax capture occurred.
And that's both entities, I would assume, the Career Center and the school district.
I can only speak to what the legislation says, which is that the school district gets 100% of what they would have otherwise had received without the district being in place. So I did want to correct my earlier comment, because I incorrectly applied the 25-75 provision, which is not the case under the extension.
Okay.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. That's all I have.
All right, Mr. Otto?
I need a little more clarification on a couple of things, and I'm going to keep these as short as possible. So the implementation of this, the current TIF is set to expire 2033. It's a 30-year TIF established in 2003, correct?
So the debt associated with this TIF district is set to expire at that time. This is what is referred to as a rolling TIF. So the district itself exists indefinitely, and as new development occurs within the district, that development then we then capture the increment for a 30-year period on that particular project, on that particular investment. In this instance, the legislation would allow us to continue to receive the increment for a period longer than the 30 years.
So that, what would that year, would that take it out 30 years from, let's say today, or 30 years from that original end date? So are we looking at, 2050, or are we looking at 2063?
It would depend on whatever the property is. So let's say, for instance, property one is already 13 years into the abatement, right? We've extended that now 30 more.
So any new property would fall into that 30-year abatement period. Is that what you're?
Any new property, I would have to defer to bond counsel on exactly how that would apply to a property that comes into the cycle beyond this extension. The way that the legislation reads is that we are providing an extension to those already receiving the benefit. So if they're not already receiving the benefit, we can't, deductively, we can't extend what they're not receiving.
Right. In other words, with this being a rolling TIF, if a new development occurs, on executive, it's not a 60-year TIF. It's still a 30-year TIF.
Correct.
Right. Okay.
Correct.
And then second would be to try to summarize what Mr. Shaw, I think, was getting to, or maybe not. We're talking $1.5 million a year coming our way. Who is not getting that $1.5 million? Because I know it's not magic; it doesn't grow on trees. So somebody's losing for us to win. Who takes the loss?
So after the first, in the first 10 years, it is a combination of the school district and the county having their resources directed to the city. After the first 10 years, it is only the county who has resources continually directed to the city relative to the increment financing.
Okay, so the county programs and Miami Valley, the CTC, that's yes, no, we don't know.
So it depends on each particular district. In this particular district, I don't believe that the CTC is exempted, because at the time that the district was formed, the CTC was not considered. But for other districts, like for the newer ones, the CTC is considered, and their funds are not withheld. Their funds are reimbursed. I believe that's how this one is structured, but I don't know. But to be definitive, I would have to check with either with Mr. Franzman.
Okay.
Mr. Bell, did you have something to add to that?
Yeah, I could just comment on that we are making payments to the local school district and the CTC each year in the Montgomery County TIF.
Yeah. In fact, if you see in the notice letters, there actually is one also to the CTC.
Okay, and the reason I ask is just I know that it's just impossible for everybody to get that money. Somebody's losing for others to gain, and in this instance, it sounds like county services, certain county services, maybe health and human services and things of that nature, schools for the first 10 years, and CTC, not really sure, but I'm just trying to wrap my head around who's not getting for us to get.
Sure, that's a very debatable topic in terms of that, because where there might be one, there's another. For instance, part of the county's revenue stream takes care of county engineering and street maintenance systems. So for an area like an urbanized township, like Butler Township, Washington Township, Harrison Township, etc., who has the advantage of having the county perform a lot of those functions for them, our taxpayers are paying for that as well. So, but then we have to, even though our taxpayers are paying that same amount, we're not getting that service. we're providing that service on top of it. So you would literally have to look at the percentage and the balances to answer, well, who's missing what? Fundamentally, really nobody is, and that's why legislatively it is perfectly legal and acceptable to instill a TIF if it was a great disadvantage and did create a burden on another political subdivision. Then I would assume that the General Assembly for all these years would not have allowed TIFs to continue to exist. So that's why there are provisions and rules that exempt certain things that are specified within the laws and ordinances. So the premise in the previous discussions within members of the community, internal and external, saying that we are robbing money from another political subdivision or a school is 100% incorrect. What we're doing is we're maximizing the ability of those tax dollars that are paid by our residents and applying those tax dollars directly within our community. Because, again, we are providing services that may or may not be provided by and through those other entities, when there's advantages in other areas of the county that aren't contributing anymore, but also don't have to have those services themselves. So that, in essence, is one of the advantages of being a city, is that you get to take on and provide those services directly. But one of the disadvantages is that there's nobody else that's going to do it for you. We can look back at when we became a city, that I'm sure we don't need to, drag this meeting on any longer, that I'm sure Mr. Campbell and others could speak about, that all of a sudden overnight, we're now responsible for all the roads. That's quite an undertaking. So, that's just kind of an explanation and justification of how and why that law exists and why it continues to exist. It's not really robbing anybody of anything. It's a redistribution and a balance of keeping the investment from the localized taxpayers back into localized projects, maintenance, and upkeep.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Mr. Campbell?
Yeah, Rob, regarding the county, do they have a fund that they live off of more than another? Like, do they make their money off sales tax?
Sales tax, without a doubt, yes.
And does our Rose Music Center generate sales tax?
Yes, it does. Every business in the city, Camping World generates sales tax hugely. Yes, sales tax.
So the more business we create, the more sales tax dollars we generate.
100%.
Which is helping the county,
100%,
who we're getting the money back from, keeping at home. Jim Bell, if you would unmute, could you tell me how much we've paid the school district from TIF per year? Can you give me some idea?
I could look that number up and give it to you a little bit later in the meeting.
Yeah,
but
could
don't
you do that? And before you do that, it's a substantial number, right?
Yes, and it grows every year, because every time the school reaches that year 11, they're getting a significant amount of dollars each year. Yes.
Brian.
Yes, sir.
Just so I know what the headline is in the morning, that we all read the newspaper. The city of Heber Heights has just discovered an additional funding source to pay for public infrastructure that could be $45 million or greater over the next 10-year period. Would that be a proper headline?
Yeah, I would say, sir, that yes, the correct headline would be that TIF extension provides up to another $45 million for public infrastructure for the city of Heber Heights. That is a correct headline.
And Richard, if you would not mind, could I continue? I think what I understood your question to be, please.
Please go right ahead. Yes.
All right. So in 2003, when we established the TIF, we captured the increment between what the value of the property was and the improvement.
Correct.
Over time, the county assesses that and might, over time, increase the value of that.
Correct.
Does our increment grow?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So to Richard's point, just recently the county evaluated, in some cases, pretty much what property values were. So when they did that, we're capturing a bigger dollar amount than we did the previous year.
Correct.
So if you guys have calculated, we're appreciating based on some scale or model about $1.5 million over a 30-year period for a total of what Rob said was $45 million, I would think that would be the floor, and it would only go up. In a rolling TIF, we've TIF'd these districts, And if 10 years into that 30-year TIF, a building comes out of the ground, it's going to be TIF for how many years?
So in
30?
this instance, it'd be 30 in this particular district.
And it might be a 10-year-old TIF district.
Correct.
So you guys have put some thought into this. When you calculated $1.5 million times 30 being 45 million, you didn't pull that number out of the air, right?
Correct.
Okay. And Jim, I would like to know that answer to piggyback Richard's point on what we have reinvested back to the schools in doing all this. So
right.
Congratulations for all of Huber Heights. I think this is a big find. Jim?
As the meeting's going on, I'm trying to look up the first year we started receiving revenues and how far they have come. I'm looking at 2003, 4, and 5. Haven't found any yet. So I'm assuming around 2006 or 7 is when we started receiving them. So I will let you know as soon as I have those figures.
Well, and we definitely won't run out of infrastructure projects within the districts, I don't think. No. And this is a big victory and something to really celebrate for Huber Heights. Good job.
Mr. Campbell, if I may continue on those comments, if the Vice Mayor would allow.
Sure.
I believe where the big bonus comes into play here, and I really, keeping the eye on the ball, the long vision, is this is not included of any type of potential infrastructure plan that could be passed by a federal state entity. Additionally, we are looking at hopefully a quick rebound economically when it comes to our gasoline tax fund, our hotel tax fund, and the buildings that are going to be, I'm hoping popping out of the ground very soon on executive. So, I think this is a complete win. Again, nobody's losing here from what I understanding. But the residents and business owners of Huber Heights is definitely winning. And I could see a several $100 million, if not a $500,000 in infrastructure coming out of the ground very soon within our community over a period of time. And that would be an M with $1 million because I think that we've been able to show our taxpayers that we've been able to find those additional revenue sources, to your point, Mr. Campbell. Thank you.
Mr. Bell?
Yes, I did locate the revenues started coming in from the Montgomery County TIF in 2007, $775,000. And just this last year, $1,991,000.
Well, that's a wow.
Significant growth over 13 years.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
I'll keep looking for the amount that we paid the schools, but I think we have a spreadsheet on that. So probably, I don't know if I can get that to you tonight in the near future.
Anytime. Thanks, Jim.
Great. Are there any more questions on this subject? Okay, are there any objections to moving this to Monday's agenda for the first reading? All right, then we'll plan on discussing it then. I don't know where our mayor is. There he is.
Hi, Jim. Okay, so next up is item 3I, which is the Business First Program renewal.
That's me as well, sir. And I think most members of council are familiar with this program. This is a 4-county region, 30-plus jurisdictions participate in this program. It's administered by Montgomery County. And the premise here is really one-stop shopping for local businesses with everything from financing assistance regarding expansion and growth to relocation assistance and several other benefits regarding operational efficiencies and those types of things. So we've been a participant for a very long time in the program. It's been very beneficial to us in several ways. One of the things that the program promotes is kind of a walk around. So about twice a year, we get together with representatives from other communities who participate in the program in the county, and then we walk, go door to door to our larger businesses just to check in and let them know, hey, we're thinking about you. You're on our mind. How are things going? What can we do? And this almost without fail leads to some kind of lead for future expansion or business retention. So and then we participate in other walkabouts for other communities who are participants. So very valuable and important program to us as a community. Very valuable and important program to my division with respect to economic development. And we would ask that council entertain legislation at your next meeting to approve another contract to continue to participate in this program for another 5 years.
Thank you, Brian. Is there any discussion? I see Mr. Bell has your hand raised on the monitor. I'm not sure if that's a continuation from the last. Okay, there it went down. So any questions or comments for Brian regarding the Business First program and that renewal now? Yes, Mr. Webb.
Thank you, Mayor. Brian, I just wanted to let you know that I do support this, and it's an excellent program for those who might be watching remotely. I think the website is Business First Dayton Region, all one word, businessfirstdaytonregion.org.
Correct.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Webb. Any other questions or comments for Brian? Any objections to moving this on to Monday? Okay, seeing none, hearing none, we'll move that on. Next up is item 3J, the license agreement at the old Taylorsville Inn property. Mr. Schomer.
Yes, if you recall, a ways back, the neighbor Hemmelgarn had volunteered to install fencing in and around that area, and they've been maintaining that. We have also recently used that lot for storage of construction equipment and materials when we added the water softening. And they have now asked if they would be able to utilize that area for storage of containers in exchange for use of land. They have agreed to maintain it and keep it in a maintained fashion. The license agreement is currently listed for a 12-month period. At such time, we can decide to maintain it or retract it. We have no current use or planned use for that area, and it would offset some of the costs necessary for us to maintain haul mowers down and keep track of that. So we bring it to you for consideration. If something the council would like to allow, then we will move forward.
Mr. Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Rob, understanding your comment just moments ago that we really have no use for the property, and it does. I'm going to jump on a limb here and say it makes common sense to allow them kind of some continued use to do that, or some use for that. My question would be: is after this lease is over with, is it something that maybe we as a city should look at a long-term plan for that property? What can and cannot be done? So maybe once this conversation comes up, let's say August, September, October of next year, we can kind of get a feel for where we're at on that, or maybe they need another lease extension. Maybe there's another opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of by design why we wanted to look at evaluating it for a year. It could be something maybe they want to purchase it in the future. So yeah, that's always an option. So yeah, we would certainly keep that in mind and work towards that going into to what we would do for the second year.
Perfect. Yeah, because I don't know, and please correct me if I'm wrong. There may be some exclusions of what we can and cannot do with that property, and I think that would be beneficial as well for a future discussion.
Yeah, we'll include that as we're looking at our comprehensive plan next year. Mr. Fakowski has just reminded me that any area that's vacant and certainly owned by the city will be included in review of that. So any suggestions from the results of that study and plan will come out as well.
Thank you. Tell Scott we certainly appreciate his feedback during our meeting.
I'm sure he just heard you say that. So
yes, thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, is there any objections from anyone to go ahead and moving that onto Monday's meeting? Okay. And next up, we have reached item 3K, which is our 2021 city budget. Mr. Schomer?
Yes, thank you. We will start off real quick. There's kind of three components of the budget within the presentation here. I'm going to start off with providing some answers to some questions and a follow-up discussion that was brought up a couple of weeks ago. Let me get that pulled up. And whoops, I shared the wrong screen. Hang on just a second. I apologize. Okay. As you should be able to see, we have the copy of the CAFR report, the page that talks about the number of personnel. The CAFR report I had indicated in a previous discussion, just because I wasn't looking at it and there was a multitude of numbers being thrown out, I said, well, perhaps it wasn't correct. And actually going back and checking and auditing it, it is in fact correct. So I just wanted to start off with that. The next component would be did the documents change?
Yes.
Okay, good. Next component is taking our, based on the discussions, taking our staffing levels and taking a look at what positions may be on the staffing chart but not funded. I know in previous discussions back in going a couple of years back, we had placed positions on the chart showing that what the goals were. But if the discussion has now led to that we don't want to do that, no problem. I certainly would admit that there was kind of a combination of a couple of different source documents to look at to get an accurate reading as to what our authorized staffing was versus what the current placement of people were versus what the funding levels were. And in an attempt to take and streamline that down, one of our options is this document, which would require passing that on to the meeting on Monday to make additional adjustments. The adjustments are included to remove any positions that aren't funded. For instance, we had a city planner position on there. Well, it's not funded. Scott's performing that. Economic Development Director. We also have an additional secretary position in the fire division. We also, based on discussions, have changed firefighter paramedics from 39 to 41 and to meet that total of 63. We have no changes in any of the other areas, with the exception of, you'll see, let me find it here. Here it is, Public Safety. You see, we have left the Director of Public Safety. We know that that's not a filled or funded position, and that's required. It's a required position by our charter. So that, as well as the Director of Public Services, you'll see that that is still listed on here as well, because again, that's a required position that we have that's listed in the charter. So this document would, I guess, match the level of the discussion that was begun, and we would then take a look at implementing and adopting this particular piece should council wish to do so. The next piece is the actual budget itself regarding some changes and amendments based on recent information. So I'm going to start off with scrolling down to the relevant slides. The first, and let me begin the show here. The first is, let's see, you're not seeing what I'm seeing, I bet.
We're looking at the pie chart now for the proposed budget.
Right. Okay. What I'm going to do is it's just going to be easier just to scroll through and do it this way without doing a full screen show, if that's okay. I think you get the picture. So we updated this to reflect the authorized employee numbers, and we broke it down and added. We previously just had fire, police, streets, but we went in admin. We went and added the entire complement of the city. And these numbers are based on what was reflected in that last chart or that last ordinance that I showed you. If those changes would be adopted. So we've removed positions that are authorized but unfunded. The only, again, exception to that, just to make sure to be 100% accurate and clear, obviously the part-time positions that are listed, those obviously weren't filled because we did not hire concession and event staff workers at the music center. So I didn't take those off because we're hopefully planning on utilizing them the next year. But to say that those are current employees, just understand those are seasonal employees in that large number there. So if you take all of those numbers together, and if you wanted to remove the 130 seasonal, that's fine. But that would be the total number, 352 employees, including part and full-time. The next slide that we made some changes on is the key budget summaries. We went back and we took a look at adjusted at revenues. A couple of events have occurred, obviously with a change in sentiment and our conservative estimates of what the revenue would be. We made modifications to that, including we're going to go ahead and project revenue into the music center, and we also project revenue, and we made some changes and adjustments in a more close review based on what our recent reports of collections are, and that has basically raised our estimates from our previous estimate in the revenues. Of course, we're not going to know what they exactly are until they are all collected through the course of the comprehensive annual financial report. The next slide is a change in the income tax distribution. There's some increases in these numbers based on the new estimates. The budget summary and the last slide is also changed. Based on those changes that we had, the budget overall is a structurally balanced budget. We talked about the difference between legally balanced and structurally balanced. And what that does is that leaves us looking at our adjustments to the revenues that we expect, adjustments to the expenses that we expect going in. We feel that has reflected accuracy in our projections, and what that has done is that has now placed us in a position where there is a $333,000 positive net on the estimate for the 2021 budget summary. So that is, in short, the update, and will be the modification to the budget ordinance that you will see on Monday. I know that was provided in the packet. These figures and information in detail in that ordinance, and that will be the amended ordinance that we will be asking for consideration and adoption in the 2021 budget. The other ordinance, as I said before, would be another companion piece should council choose to move forward with that. And I will now close my screen out and turn it over to Mr. Browser for our presentation regarding, as I told you last week, the overall debt of the city and the debt rating. But before I do that, I wanted to make special notice and recognition to our finance department. That seems to be a common theme tonight for Mr. Bell. One of the things that we were recently notified of is an award through 3+1, our cash vest score. And I'll let Jim briefly talk on it real quickly. But as council knows and recalls, our financial position, our transparency, and our handling of public funds is under scrutiny not only by the public, not only by you as elected officials, but also by the state, our independent auditors. And on top of that, Jim and our staff have made the conscious decision to have yet another independent entity and firm review a specific component of our finances, and that is basically the liquidity and the handling and investment of the cash within the city. and it takes a level of standards to meet consistent high ratings of 90 and above. And we were recently provided the award for meeting that mode of excellence by this independent firm. Again, this is a voluntary thing, much like if you think about our police accreditation. We don't have to do it, but we choose to, and we receive high ratings and standards. The audit is something we have to do by law, but this is another layer that we consciously take on. Jim, you want to real quick review what that award is, what it's called?
Well, the company 3+1, which is a national company that I met by attending the Government Finance Officers Association, and they've been promoting their services there, and talked to a couple other of my colleagues there. The one lady from Dublin, she's been using them for a couple of years and highly recommended them, said that it helped her to earn more than $20,000 additional dollars per year in just more closely managing the liquidity of money. And by that, I mean, for instance, just this week, so we received almost $8 million of note proceeds. And so instead of me just parking it in our Chase account, earning, just a few dollars of interest, I identified, some of those monies are from the advance to the general fund. So that money is not going to be used for any purchase of property coming up. So might as well put that to good use, put it to investment. And so I moved that out of the Chase account immediately. And just doing small little things like that, what they do is they rate the ability of myself and staff here to move those monies as quickly as possible to the best possible earnings account, and make the best use. Don't have stale cash sitting around. And so the award is only given if you reach that 90 or above efficiency level for 4 straight quarters. So it's not just one quarter, it's doing it over an entire year. So this recently, this third quarter of 2020 was the 4th quarter in a row that we've been able to be that efficient with managing the liquidity of the city's, the taxpayers' dollars. And so I'm very proud of that award. And it has, it's funny, when you first sign up with them, they guarantee you that they're going to earn you $10,000 or more in more interest earnings. And if they don't hit that, then you don't pay them a dime. And they more than have proved that since then, and they're a very good resource. I talk to them quarterly. They go over all of their metrics, and they keep me extremely challenged to watch the city's funds and manage them the best way possible.
Well, Council, I think another example of what we're doing on the benefit of representing all the taxpayers on your behalf and the policies that you set as council. And I know we've talked a lot about great opportunities and methods and ways of celebrating successes this year. Going back on the budget real quick as well, I think that's an example of a year where we project certainly some potential losses in revenue going into next year, without a doubt, is the effect of COVID. We're going to see individual business profit and business returns a little bit lower. But on top of that, we also have always bet on ourselves in terms of how we manage to diversify our economy locally. We were very lucky and not impacted as bad as some communities that don't have as diversified of a local economy. And I think taking a look at and being very diligent with how and what we do. One of the things, Mr. Mayor, I heard you talk about in a conversation the other day is about you ended up talking about a document where you recognized how our general fund balance, our liquidity, our cash has increased substantially and sequentially year after year. And that's certainly not by accident. That is a conscious effort to make sure that this city is put in a position where when it does go out to issue debt, we have the best rating that we possibly can get. And we also make sure we're not the taxpayers' piggy bank, to use a phrase from other council members. But it is necessary to make sure that we do have good reserves and that we do have liquidity and responsible use for that. So I appreciate the awareness and knowledge by you, Mr. Mayor, by other members of council, of recognizing the importance of managing our fund balances to keep and to improve the city's financial position and stability. And I think in combination of all these things, I think that we really, going into 2021, are in, I think, a comfortable position. Could it be better? Certainly, but those are based on things that are out of our control. But the things that are in our control, we stay aware of. And I think based on all this information, including a budget going into 2021 that based on revenues and expenses, we still see a positive net at the end. I think that that's huge. Certainly we have reserves to provide for extraordinary expenses and one-time costs that we will continue to do as council makes supplemental appropriations and chooses to take on various additional projects or budgets or improvements or unanticipated, repairs and expenses that come on. That's why you have that structured buildup of fund balance, and that really is a demonstration of good solid practices over the last few years, and we continue to build on that. And I know Andy is ready to go with his presentation. I know we've kept him waiting. I would appreciate allowing him the opportunity to get through that. And then if that would be okay, with all due respect, to take questions after that, so that he can get on with his presentation and evening, if that's all right.
Yeah, I think that'll be fine.
Okay.
Andrew, thanks so much for joining our meeting, and certainly look forward to your presentation.
You're welcome. Rob, let me share my screen on the presentation. Okay.
Yep, go right ahead.
Let me load this up.
And for all that you don't know, Andy Brossard, he is our financial advisor for the city. And he is the one that we consult with to identify when we are looking to issue debt, when we are looking to manage the city's coffers per se. Jim utilizes him as a resource, and I'll let him take it from there. We just lost you, Andy.
Okay. Can everyone see the presentation that's on the screen?
We did, and now it's gone.
Now it's gone. Let me try that one more time. How's that?
There we go.
Good? Okay. So good evening. We're going to walk through about 16 slides here. I promise I won't keep you here all night talking about bond information, but we're going to walk through first just a brief introduction on the bond market, where that stands today, to give you a feel for where interest rates are at. Then we're going to walk through the outstanding debt, and we've got that classified in detail and then broken out by different categories for you. And then we're going to walk through some refunding opportunities that are available to the city that you're going to see us presenting to council, assuming interest rates stay where they're at and the savings stay where they are at, that the city will have the opportunity to take advantage of as we head into 2021 with the opportunity finally approaching us. So first slide here, tax exempt interest rates, just to give you a snapshot as to where the market currently stands, and what you have before you in the gray bar, as you see that the top line and the bottom line, that is your average of where interest rates have been going back to 1991. And we present this slide because we think it's a pretty powerful picture of where the market is today. And so the gray bar, it's been as high as, hard to believe, 7% back in 1991. And recently we've made some all-time lows. Actually, this year we did on the yield curve. The average is actually right in the middle. And so in that orange line there, that's the average interest rate on the yield curve. And so what we have here, going from left to right, is the first year of a particular bond maturity, going all the way out to the 30th year. If you issued a 30-year bond, what the interest rates would be on the average. And then the green line is the November, we call the MMD. It's the AAA rate, which is yield curve, which is what all the bonds in the market are priced off of. And so you can see there that we're just slightly off of the all-time lows, but a very flat yield curve and a yield curve that most are very surprised that they can access on a AAA curve below 2% tax exempt rates for 30 years. So that's the current market as to where we are at today. We saw a lot of volume in October rushing to beat the presidential election. If you recall, 4 years ago, after the presidential election, there was a spike in interest rates of about 50 basis points to 75 basis points. And that was the concern of a lot of bond issuers. And so October of this year was the second largest issuance month ever. And now it's settled down again. So interest rates are viewed to be steady and not expected to go anywhere for a while. In terms of credit ratings, we always like to go over the credit ratings for the city and where that stands today. The city actually has 4 outstanding credit ratings. The top 4 firms, as you see up on the screen, are Moody's, Standard & Poor's, and Fitch Ratings. Moody's has been the predominant one that the city has utilized in the past. And as you see down below there, the ratings that are outstanding for the city is the AA3 for a general obligation rating for the city, an A1 for the income tax revenue bonds that are outstanding by Moody's, A1 for the water revenue bonds of the city by Moody's, and AA- for the water revenue rating for the city. And so if you go to the far left, the higher, if you will, the credit rating, the lower the interest rates. And obviously, as you go down below on the credit rating curve, the lower the interest rates, and then you fall off of the investment grade category. So this is where the ratings are for the city. Very solid ratings and very typical for a city of your size and with the demographics. There's a lot of factors that go into a credit rating for a municipality, and staying away from the water credit rating for now. Demographics, size, things that you really can't control in a short-term period or impact your credit rating. Income and wealth levels. And as you see down below there, we hit some highlights of what kind of factors could help the city move up that credit ladder. One is improvement in economic and demographic indicators. That would be population and income and wealth. And then the other one is moderation of the city's debt burden. One more factor that's not included on there that I didn't put on there is increasing your general fund balances. And sometimes that goes against really probably what is for the public good in terms of continuing to increase your balances, but that does have an impact on your credit rating as well. Factors that could lead to a downgrade, deterioration in the economic profile, population, income qualities. Those are factors that they've keyed on lately. When they start to see structurally imbalanced operations, meaning you're spending more than you're bringing in, and deterioration in the fund balance, they'll continue to watch that and see if it continues in a trend, and then they'll want to call the city and find out what's going on with those trends. And then any notable increases in city debt and pension burdens. Pension burdens are a factor that's come in the last 5 to 10 years in terms of credit ratings. We didn't used to see them back as part of the credit profile when I first got into business 20 some years ago. But it's really obviously the headlines out there with a lot of the pension burdens across the states. They are now more of an impact on credit ratings than they ever have been before. Just to note, though, there is an allocation from the state on the amount that would be allocated back to the city of Huber Heights if that were to happen. And what Moody's and S&P tries to do with that pension burden is to make it fair across all states. And so we continually tell them in Ohio that the total amount, whether it's $50 million for the city of Huber Heights, isn't currently due. They still use that as an indicator to compare apples to apples to other communities across the United States. Moving on to the debt summary, and hopefully you all can see this pretty clearly. We tried to give you the information, but also limit the amount of data that was tossed up here. And I'd like to just go through a column here, and maybe we focus on that first column for the 2010 LTGO and Brown. Under each one of these, and we've got 2 pages here for you to see, we indicate what the security is up top. So, for example, that's a limited tax general obligation pledge of the city for the 2010A. It was issued for the purpose of the splash pad and some deck special assessment needs. The tax status on it is tax exempt. Then we list the original par outstanding at $2.9 million in that case. And then what is outstanding to date under the 2010As, it's $190,000. That one is close to being paid off at this time. It was originally issued back in 2010. You can see the final maturity for each one of these, and this one is listed at 12/1 of 2021. And the optional redemption for that deal is a 12/1 of 20. So the optional redemption means that the first date that we can call the bond and refinance at the city's discretion, not at the investor's discretion. So it's our ability to refinance the bond if we so choose, or pay it off. We then list each credit rating for each deal for you, and then what type of transaction it is, if it was a capital markets deal or a SIB loan or a private placement with a bank. And then down below there, the last 2 columns, we indicate what is the repayment source. So, for example, that is the general fund and special assessments, and then what the max annual debt service is for that bond issue specifically. And so that was the 2010As. The 2010Bs it is made up of several different purposes, and so we're going to transition down. I'm not going to go through each one of these for you, but this gives you a layout. And I believe you're going to get a copy of this if you haven't already, to take a look at and analyze. But we also have there the water bonds that are listed in blue, the income tax revenue bonds that were issued for the Aquatic Center. Again, the 2014 water revenue bonds, the SIB loan in 2014, that was for the Montgomery County TIF and the Music Center. And then the 2015 LTGO fire bonds that were issued. The next page continues on with the 2016 SIB loans, the 2017 limited tax general obligation issue for carriage trails. The green column there is the carriage trails and Music Center 2017. The brown is the various purpose issue in 17 that was a refinancing of some 2010 bonds. 2010 bonds is the Music Center financing as well. And then in 2020, you have OWDA loans for the water system. And then finally, there are various leases that we wanted to list out for you. It's a lot of information at once, but wanted to list it out for you individually by financing source that has been completed. So down below in this next slide, we then come down into the funding source, and we thought it would be helpful to break it out as to of all the information that was up on 4 and 5, to break it down into the funding source for those bond issues. And so, for example, we compiled all the debt for the Miami County TIF that's paid out of that TIF district. And we have the carriage trails improvements and the Aquatic Center. And in there, we have a combination of city LTGO bonds and gas tax revenue on some of the SIB loans. The original par on all that debt was $26 million. At the end of this year, we will be down to a little over $20 million. And the final maturity of those bonds in the Miami County TIF is 12/1 of 37. And all those bonds in aggregate have interest rates that range from 2.67 to 5.92. And the maximum debt service payment in that issue is, in that TIF district, is about $2.1 million a year. Going to go through the Montgomery County TIF as well. That's the next column over. Again, we list out, it's all for the Music Center in terms of what's being paid out of there. We have a combination of LTGO bonds and gas taxes as payment sources. Original amount issued is $20.5 million. We are now at the end of this year down to a little over $18.7 million. The final maturity in there is 12/1 of 2042, and have interest rates that go from 2.63 to 3.35, and just a little over $1 million, almost $1.1 million in debt service a year. The other two funds, or I would say by funding source, that are significant would be the special assessment bonds that are paid out of carriage trails improvements and the special assessment districts up there. And that is all LTGO bonds or LTGO credit. Original par $9.5 million. We're down to $8.1 million. Final payment is 2042. Interest rates from 3.35 to 5%. And the max debt service there is about $1.3 million. And then lastly, the water fund. The water fund is actually one of the ones you're going to see a lot next year, because that's the couple opportunities to refinance some debt for some savings. And so we currently originally had $41 million in debt issued for that system. We're down to $28.4 million. And the final maturity on that, mainly from the OWDA loans that are outstanding, is 2050, with interest rates from 3% to 4.75%, and annual debt service about $4.6 million. So we took all that information and wanted to put it in a graphical format for you to show you graphically how this lays out over time. And so here you see the Miami County TIF district in terms of the annual debt service payment that's required each year. You can see it's pretty level, and then it starts to tail off over time. We do note there for you in 2032, you see that spike. The bonds were designed, because those are privately placed, I believe, with Huntington Bank, that there's about 3 years left, 2 to 3 years left of principal that the city, at that point in time, about $865,000 worth, will either need to refinance in 2032 or pay that off at that point in time. In terms of that maturity that comes due in 2032, but you can see it tails off to 2038, unless other debt is issued in the future. This next slide is the Montgomery County TIF, and you can see here how it slowly over time pretty much stays stable at that $1.4 million amount. There is a slight blip there in 2021, which we're going to talk about. Refinancing that we're going to have to take care of next year on a private placement issue. That'll then get smoothed out over time, but that debt falls off in 2042, and I think we had some discussion tonight already about the TIF being extended, and you can see thereafter 2042 is that last payment that goes down to about a little over $800,000, call it $850,000 a year, I think, in that year. Here is the special assessment bonds. And this list here shows you the principal and interest. In this case, what's left on those issues starting in 2020 all the way out to 2042. The purple band there is the principal portion, and then the green is the interest portion for those bonds. And you can see they drop off in 2028 to 2029, significant portion down in terms of the special assessment that will be outstanding at that point in time. And then our final chart for you tonight is the water bonds. And you can see that there's an issue out there that has been outstanding for quite some time, the 1995 water revenue bonds. When those were issued, that's the first column here, and the final maturity is 2025. Those were issued as non-callables, so we never had a chance to refinance those. But you can see here with a lot of the debt that there's a drop off that comes in later in 2031 for debt service. And we drop from about a little over 2.5, call it $2.6 million a year, down to 1.5, and then as more debt gets paid off, we drop off again in 2038. And so those are the different issues that make up your water fund debt service. I'm going to walk through a few issues here. I'll do this fairly quickly. The 2013 A bonds you're going to see is one of the bond issues we've been watching and talking with Jim about. These will, let me step back a bit. When they did the Tax Reform Act a few years ago, they took away the ability of local governments to advance refund bonds before the call date and attain savings. And so now we have to unless they change it, there's been discussion in the current, the House bill that was passed last year, had some provisions for local governments to be able to go back to refinancing debt before the call date. But we're still held under those requirements. And so our first option on the 2013 A bonds comes up next year. And so August of next year, we have the chance on this issue to, if the market makes sense, to take a look at refinancing, not extending the debt life, not increasing it, but taking advantage of the interest rates that are outstanding, which are about 4.7%. And right now, almost cutting that in half. And just for the 13A bonds, we'd be looking at a net present value savings of about $1.1 million. And it's about 26.7% savings. You don't always see that these days. I mean, that's some significant savings on a refinancing opportunity. We typically, the market industry standards is to look at a refinancing when it's in the 3 to 5% range. And so I think GFOA, their standards or their suggestion is over 5%. And you see there on that issue, we're at 26.7% savings. So that'll be about August of next year when we're able to do that. At the same time, we have the 2014 water bonds. And when we did this issue years ago, we made sure it timed up with the previous issue in terms of a refinancing opportunity, if it ever came up. And again, this one is December 1st of next year, same time frame. On this issue, the average interest rates that are outstanding about 3.19%. And we're able to get down to about 1.57%. Again, a nice savings, $823,000 in net present value savings, about 10.51% percentage-wise. The last one for refinancing savings is the income tax revenue bonds that were issued back in 2013. This again has a 12/1 of 21 optional call redemption for us. And we'll be looking at about almost $1.3 million in savings, a 20% savings for that issue. So keep your fingers crossed, some nice savings open to the city next year. And just to summarize you with next steps on this last page from what we'll be looking at next year and when you'll be back seeing legislation. The Music Center private placement with Huntington Bank, about $7.7 million, matures 6/1/21. So January and February of next year, we'll be back with a legislation process to refinance those bonds into a longer fixed rate issue so that we can get that done in May 21 to meet when that 7.7 comes due on that issue. And, you know, when we originally did that deal, we didn't think that interest rates would be any lower than what we got that financed at, but that means everything. And the city's going to be able to enjoy lower interest rates than what they're currently paying on the music financing. We talked about the water bonds, the 13 and the 14 issues. Those will be back before you, probably the legislation process in May of 21. The earliest we could actually issue the bonds in the market would be August of 21, and that's 90 days prior to the call date. And so that's we talked about those savings on that issue. We also talked about the 2013 income tax revenue bonds as a possible refinancing. That'll take the same process and timeline as the water bonds in May of 21, with an issuance sometime in August of 21. And then the 2020 bond anticipation notes will come due that were just closed this week. Those will mature November 17th of 21. The current plan is to renew that for an additional year. And so we'll start that process probably in August, September to get the legislation in line to get that passed in time. And then we also have talked internally about, because rates are so low, is to take the Veterans Memorial long term and combine that at the same time with the Music Center financing. We're able to combine those together for sale purposes and save money and keep the issuance costs down. And because rates are so low, the thought is to get that fixed permanently at this present time. One other item is that down the road, the Series 15 third fire station financing that was done in 2015, 1.8 million tax-exempt TGO bonds will be refinanced in 12/1 of 23. We'll have to begin that process in August of 23. So that is a quick summary of where we're at with the debt. I actually hate doing it that way. I would prefer folks jump in with questions as we go along instead of me talking the whole time. But that is what we have for you tonight. And Rob, I guess we're ready to entertain any questions that anybody may have.
Okay, so Rob, unless you have a comment to make. Mrs. Burge had her hand up earlier, so I just wanted to ask her if she has a question. And Mr. Webb has his hand up also. Mrs.
No,
Burge,
he answered my question. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Mr. Webb, questions?
Yes. Thank you, Mayor. Andy, I just wanted to mention that it was a great presentation, and Rob did get an advanced copy of the presentation out to all of us. So we didn't have to follow along on the screen necessarily. We were able to see it in a bigger format and very clear. Thank you.
Good. Thank you.
One comment that I'd like to make, Andy, if you could go to slide 8. And just to make sure, I know we've talked about some things, and we talked about the Montgomery County TIF, and I know we talked about, and even up to slide 6, it defines out what the sources of debt service allocation is funded through and by the Montgomery County TIF. All of the debt service currently assigned to the Montgomery County TIF is covered and taken care of through that and that own funding source. In other words, anything that is currently, including the Music Center, including the remaining financing for those infrastructure projects, the Aquatic Center, et cetera, that would be attached to that funding source, it's covered. That's what this demonstrates, right?
Right.
Again, Council, I think that as we embarked upon the 2025 plan, you recall that we took on a financial policy. We did some restructuring, some of those refinancings in 17 that Andy referenced. Again, common theme tonight is identifying things that are worthy of success and celebration. Promises, to the community as far as the output and success of the investments made on their behalf. Here's another example that the plans put in place, the policies set, are working, and by all educated, professional estimates and guesses and theories, it's going to continue to work.
So, Rob, I have a comment. So, I'm looking over just all of the slides here, listening to the presentation, and listening to our budget presentation for next year, and hearing the things that Mr. Bell has said. I mean, as I look at these, and I know one of the meetings that I wasn't running but paying attention, Mr. Bell had mentioned that we have revenue streams. The city has revenue streams that cover debt service that we're paying. So when I look at knowing we have revenue streams that cover debt service, we have a net budget increase or decrease, actually. We look at that net of $333,000. When you look at the projects that we've done, that we've undertaken, debt that we've borrowed, savings, future savings for interest rates, the potential $45 million we found for infrastructure. I mean, when I look at the finances of our city, I feel like we are in incredibly good shape. And, so if I'm looking at this stuff wrong, if I'm hearing something wrong, then yeah, somebody would need to tell me. But I think citizens that are watching this, paying attention, who have concerns about the city's finances, look, I think this is a time to tell everyone, let everyone know we're in good shape. We've made good decisions. We're following through on those decisions. We're providing top quality, top-notch services to the residents of Heber Heights. And financially speaking, I think the ship is definitely headed in the right direction. If I'm wrong, please let me know.
No, I'm certainly not the financial advisor, but going through and helping implement some of the goals of policy over the last several years, and working on some stuff administratively. That slide I was going to ask Andy to go to kind of speaks and says it all. We would not be rated in the area that we would, nor would investors be willing to buy our request for bonds and debt had we not shown strong fiscal policies and the ability to manage and pay that debt off. That in and of itself says it all. The fact that you talk about revenues, certainly if we did not have adequate revenues and able to demonstrate that through the various methods that we do, through auditing, through that independent source, 3+1 and the cash vest rating, all those things contribute to demonstrating not only what we think that we're doing, but we have that checked independently. And the bond rating is yet another way that we are reviewed independently with all those things. And I think that in and of itself demonstrates it. Somebody could be stating, well, the city shouldn't have any debt at all. I'd like to find, and maybe there's a city out there that is like that, but in reality, there's just not. And as I mentioned earlier, the things that we are able to control, I think that we manage and control well. And I think that is certainly demonstrated not by us, but by those independent sources and our ability to continue to invest in the community using that. We're not the federal government. We cannot operate in a negative or deficit situation. We always have to be able to be legally or structurally balanced. If not, then we go into a state of fiscal emergency. So, all these demonstrations show that the courses that we've taken and the path that we're on, I mentioned earlier, that increase of our fund balances, go back 6 years and see where they were compared to today. That's taken effort. And at the same time, look at what we've invested and what we've accomplished in the community. How does that happen? Well, that happens through good, strong policy, and that happens through making sure that we're utilizing the resources that we have well, that we've got community consumer confidence high, and we've got confidence in those independent rating sources as being high. So yeah, all that said, I think your statement is easily supported.
Yeah, when I think about just projects that we've done, money that we've spent, money that we've borrowed to reinvest in the city, all the while having revenue that covers the debt service, all the while able to put more money in that rainy day fund, increasing our general fund balance, having the money to do that, shows very sound fiscal management on the staff and the policy that the council makes. And I think again I'd heard on one of the meetings when we were talking about again, it was a meeting while I was sick. I wasn't running that meeting, but I heard the question asked, how much money in cash does the city have? What kind of money do we have in the total of all those funds? And I believe Mr. Bell said that number was somewhere around $45 million.
That is correct.
So we have some of those funds that grow. We spend some of the money out of those funds that come up for the different departments and the different portions of the city that's dependent on that money. But all in all, those fund balances were $45 million years ago. They're still $45 million. So that's sound fiscal management. All the while we've grown the general fund. We've added amenities to the city. I believe we've made the quality of life for the residents better. And we still have strong fiscal management and the ability to continue to invest in Heber Heights. And I think that's fantastic, and I couldn't be more pleased.
Yes,
so thank you.
Everybody should be happy and celebrating that coming out of. We all want 2020 in our rearview mirror, and I think we've got a good stepping stone to launch us into 21 with everything that's occurred. And everything that you talked about has to do with Jim. There's so much that the finance director of a city does that I think a lot of people don't really realize. He's not just the individual that makes sure that the books are accounted for, but as we talked about, the award given for the liquidity and the management of it. To give you an example, Jim just talked about we received the proceeds of those notes, the several $1,000,000 for the purchases. Well, Jim, first thing in the morning, is going to be transferring that to Star Ohio to make sure that if there's some additional and enhanced interest that we can collect until we draw down and use those funds, he's doing it. That's one of the things in looking for ways to invest and make sure to maximize the liquidity that we have to get the largest part of return. A lot of our, part of our revenue is interest income. And, the goal is to get as much as we can. There was interest income in the CARES fund. So in the short time that we had that money, Jim made interest on it. And, that's just an example of having, like you said, good sound policies. So hopefully you all as policymakers have an extreme amount of confidence in what you've put in place. And, hearing reports like this, continuing to have the level of transparency that we have, so that the taxpayers have the ability to review and see and challenge us on anything, I think all contributes to that overall confidence moving forward.
Thanks, Rob. I could not agree with you more. And I appreciate the hard work that goes into managing a city with a budget approaching $90 million. So great work to everybody. Mr. Campbell, do you have a comment?
Yes, Andy?
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much for your presentation. Jim Bell?
Yes, sir.
Since you've been here within the last 10 years, we've went through a great recession and now COVID. What's your opinion of how we've handled things?
Well, we've seen highs and we've seen lows, and I'm glad to know that right now we're on a high. And I know you've challenged me over the years, and I'm sure you're awfully proud tonight the fact that one of your ideas about the music center is we promised the community that we were going to take out long-term what we could at the beginning, and then we would come back to the community and say, okay, when we have the funds available to go long-term with the remaining 7.7 million, we would come and do it. And now's the time next year where we can take it. And so the community can know that the entire music center debt is going to be covered by the TIF revenues.
I'm proud of the citizens and the support they've shown. I'm proud of every council member present and past, and staff and all the workers. I believe one thing we can all take pride in as a community, Rob, I can't remember a time we've laid employees off. Am I correct?
I've never known in my 25 years as an employee of the city, I've never known it to occur.
But I'm proud to work with everyone, again, present and past. I'm very impressed getting a summary. We don't typically take the time to review and then celebrate on this level. So I do appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, the goal was to make sure our debt situation is commonly talked about, and we feel that we do review it. But I think from the standpoint and perspective of our financial advisor, being able to categorize it like this, I really appreciate Andy's work on that. And these type of discussions and information is something, as I told you early on, was very important to us this year. Going in knowing we're going to have an issue next year, or an issuance for debt. And I just want to make sure the council and the community understands the structure of what we currently have in the position that we are, so that there are no false impressions or bad assumptions. The fact is that our policies and our practices have been fiscally responsible, and we are in a high quality rating. So thank you, Andy, also.
Any other questions or comments for Andy or for Rob or for Mr. Bell regarding the budget presentation or debt summary? Okay. Thank you, everyone. So do we need to, so were there two portions of the budget that would be coming forth? What do we need, if anything, for the council meeting for any type of approval, or would that come in different stages? I know.
Yeah, we would be prepared to bring forward, already we have the budget ordinance, that additional ordinance regarding the staffing table was the other piece of legislation in the overall discussion. So whatever council would like.
Okay. Any objections to move this on forward to Monday for the ordinance?
The ordinance has already had a first reading, so this would be the second reading. And Jim has presented an amended ordinance, so what council would be acting on Monday would be to amend that ordinance to the revised version and then adopting it at the second reading on Monday.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Okay, seeing none, hearing none, that's how that will move forward. Next up is item 3L, which is the 2021 Montgomery County Public Defender Agreement.
Sorry, I just want to get clarification on the other legislation Rob referenced. As far as the staffing levels, was that going to be seen on Monday as well?
I think that was that just for the presentation portion there, Rob, or we don't need to make any changes to that, correct?
No, that piece of legislation does in fact change our existing staffing table, as I indicated, and based on the discussion. And if that's something that we need to present moving forward, I've provided that information based on earlier discussions.
Okay. Any objections to the staffing tables being included in that? Okay, hearing none, that's what we'll see that as well. Thanks, Rob.
Okay.
Next, item L, 2021 Montgomery County Public Defender Agreement. Mr. Rogers.
Yes, similar to what council saw a few meetings ago for the Miami County Public Defender Agreement. This is the agreement for 2021 for the Montgomery County Public Defender to represent indigent persons within the city. They've maintained the same rates in contract as in previous years, which is a rate of $222.84 per case. So they've maintained that going into the new year, the same as in 2020. This is a resolution, and we would like to get this in place before the end of the year to be ready for 2021. So the request would be to put this resolution on the agenda for adoption on Monday.
Perfect. Thanks, Tony. Any objections to that? Okay, we'll move that on to Monday's meeting. Next up is item 3M, the liquor permit number 607-668-50005 for Modern Food and Gas at 5186 Brant Pike.
Yes, this is a transfer of a liquor permit at 5186 Brant Pike. This is formerly the Double Deuces property that has been demolished, the building, and it's going to be a convenience store and gas station. And so it's also going to be operating under the name Modern Food and Gas, doing business as Double Deuces. And this liquor permit transfer has been reviewed by the police and fire divisions, and there were no objections to the transfer of the liquor permit. So we would be asking for council's approval on Monday of a motion to have no objections to the transfer of that liquor permit.
Thanks, Mr. Rogers. Ms. Burge.
Yes. Since it's got the I think the DBA of Double Deuce, is it the same owner, Tony? Do you know?
It's listed as different corporate entities, and that's why they're doing a transfer between the entities. As far as the stockholders or shareholders behind the corporation, I do not know if that's the same people as the current owners.
So do we have, it just seems weird that we're transferring a license when there's just an empty lot there. So have the plans been approved for the new business?
I don't know what the status is of that. Scott or Rob might be able to speak to that if that's been through Planning Commission yet. It would not be uncommon, though, to transfer a license to a prospective business at the same location. That would be fairly normal in the scheme of things.
Yeah, the only thing different is, right, you know, the former business was demolished. So, yeah, that's all right. I was just curious because
I think that the fact that it was demolished is the step towards that they're actively moving on their plan to establish the new business at that location.
Sure. Okay. Thank you, Tony.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Webb?
Thank you, Mayor. This is for Tony also. Tony, is there any significance to the address on the liquor license stating 5186 Brant Pike and patio on both the old and the new?
I can't say I've seen that before, but the property address for the former Double Deuces and the proposed address site for the gas station and convenience store is both 5186 Brant Pike.
Okay, so the and patio doesn't grant them the right to serve as Double Deuce did out in the parking lot.
They would still have to comply with any of the conditions that are set forth in the zoning district in which they're located and based on the permitted use for that property.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions regarding that this evening? Okay. Next up is item 3N, the board and commission appointments.
Yes, the last one, this is an appointment of a new member to the Parks and Recreation Board. We have one current vacancy on that board. This would fill that vacancy. There were two people that applied for the open vacancy. They were both interviewed by our interview panel. Christopher Hall was selected to be the person to be appointed to that vacancy for a term ending March 31st, 2022. We're currently processing the background check on Mr. Hall and would like to proceed with this appointment on Monday if that background check comes back prior to that meeting. The other candidate was also a qualified candidate and had expressed an interest in some other service on one of the other boards and commissions that have vacancies. And so we'll be bringing forth at the next meeting that individual for appointment to the Property Maintenance Review Board.
Okay. Any objections to that item? Okay, hearing none, we'll move those commission appointments onto Monday. Rob, real quick, before we adjourn, I know there is a reason for an executive session this evening. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. So before we adjourn, back on the staffing level, then I just wanted to kind of clarify, was that those readjusted numbers in the staffing levels? Is that when I had asked kind of for objections to that? Is that the recommendation, or I know you had brought that forward based on some discussion in the past, but is that something that needs to move forward on to the next council meeting? I feel like I need some clarification around that.
Yeah, that wasn't part of the budget ordinance. That was part of the overall budget discussion because that's where the questions were raised and lied previous. If those changes are desired, then yes, that ordinance would need to move forward, as was discussed and presented.
Okay, and then based on some of the previous year's legislation, I think the way that was laid out, I'm not sure that needs to move forward. Based on the previous numbers and what the council had agreed to, I'm not sure that particular staffing change needed to move forward. Mr. Campbell?
Yes, Rob Schomer.
Yes.
Mayor Gore. I believe that what we have in regard to the staffing level currently tonight, we need to spend some more time and do some more research, in my opinion, before we put that on Monday's agenda. I'm not comfortable changing that number tonight and moving forward. So that staffing that you presented to us included a number for firefighter paramedics that I'm still not 100% on top of. That's the number.
Because I think the other issue is as we talked about, and Rob, you had mentioned with those staffing levels, the way they look, I think we do need to try to figure out how we show proper staffing levels when we talk about positions, and then we talk about what's funded and what's not funded or unfunded. I think some of those, and I think I'm a pretty smart guy. As I look at some of that, it's difficult to keep track of when we look at those staffing levels. So I'd agree with Mr. Campbell. I think maybe we need some more discussion around how those get listed. So going back and looking at what you presented, I'm not sure that needs to move forward as that piece. And I think I'm in agreement with Mr. Campbell here that we need to have a little bit further discussion around that before we would agree to change those staffing levels.
Yeah, that's fine. We can be prepared to provide whatever council wishes.
Okay, so Tony, I'm not sure. So you had asked about how that piece of it moving forward too on the staffing level. I don't think that piece needs to move forward on the next council meeting. I think just the piece of the second reading for the budget ordinance. Mr. Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just because it kind of seems like we have been circling around this wagon for a couple of weeks now, is the city manager, and this is just my clarification, is the city manager clear on what is being asked in the next work session, what he'll need to bring, whether it's funded, unfunded, to what charts, to what information? Because it kind of seems like, at least in my opinion, over the past couple of weeks, there's been a different conversation, and what I believe the city manager provided today was very clear and concise, unless I missed something.
Is that a direct question to Mr. Schomer, or?
Yeah, if Mr. Schomer's clear on what he needs to bring back to the next work session, because I thought what he presented was very clear, and he provided a very good explanation on what the numbers were, and those were fact. I mean, outside of bringing the fire chief in and getting, the director's opinion on the position, but we hired the city manager to provide that oversight. I guess I may be missing something here, and I apologize if I am.
Mayor, could I speak?
Yes, Mr. Campbell.
Do I understand, Rob, that what you presented tonight would increase the budget by hiring additional firefighters?
Yes.
Richard, are you okay with that? Because I'm not sure I am. Pardon me?
Do I believe we need additional firefighters?
No, I didn't ask that. Are you?
Okay.
We have current staffing levels, we have current positions funded, and most of that occurred in February 2018 at a meeting that you were absent and another council person was absent. The vote, I think, was 5-1. And we talked about a certain specific number of firefighters. There is some question how many firefighters that should have been. I didn't have any time to research this issue really until today. So I went back and looked at the council meeting, and I'm really unclear what the number should be, and I'm not confident it's 41. And the number that's current, Rob, am I correct that it's 39?
Yes, that is correct. As a result of that discussion up to today, yes.
And if we move forward with what you submitted tonight based on last week's discussion, it would impact the budget with 2 additional salaries. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And I think I need to have more research and more dialogue before I'm okay with that. And there's not a stronger advocate with the fire division than I am. But if you look at the 2018 video, I think it's, Tony, correct me, is it February the 18th?
12th.
February 12th, 2018. Richard, if you would go back and look at 11 minutes.
2018.
Okay, 11 minutes, 57 seconds. Seth Morgan asked the city manager for clarity, and you'll get a lot of answers from that video. Now, you might be able to go back 2-3 more years and talk about staffing levels, but as it is tonight, I'm not certain that 41 is the correct number. And there's not a bigger proponent of public safety than I am. So I want us fully staffed. But during that discussion in February of 2018, Rob was answering Seth Morgan, Councilman Morgan's questions in the entire discussion. Fire Chief Mark Ashworth was at the podium and agreed to everything. And it was Mark Ashworth who brought up the issue of hiring more firefighters. And he wanted 3 firefighters. The issue was we had 38 on the organizational chart, Richard, but we had only funded 36. And when Seth asked for clarification of how many additional firefighters we would hire, Rob said, I want to make that perfectly clear, 1 more, for a total of 39, because 2 of the positions weren't funded. So it was 36 plus 3, which would be 39. If you went with the staffing level of 38, 2 of which weren't funded, 38 and 3 is 41, and I think that's what we have tonight. And I'm not opposing anyone, and I'm not arguing with anyone, but honest engine, after looking at the video today, I'm not certain 41's the right number.
I would like to, and you don't have to answer this today, but in your opinion, where did the numbers fall apart and how were they confused?
Okay, if I were to look at the 2017 staffing for firefighter paramedics, it says 38. If you look at the legislation that was passed February 12th, 2018, we passed 39, a total of 39. And in the legislation, I think the second paragraph might speak to, we want to add 3 firefighters. So if you look at that and we want to add 3 firefighters based on the February 12th, 2018 legislation added to the staffing level in 2017 of 38, the number should have been 41, but it's 39. Okay, so you think the number should be 41. If you go back and look at the video, Rob explains it because he's being asked questions by Councilman Morgan while the chief who brought up the request originally for 3 additional firefighters stood there, and Rob explains, no, we're only going to add 1 more because there's 2 that aren't hired and aren't paid for in the current budget. So if you go by that, it's 36 and 3. So it's 3, but do you add 3 to 36 or do you add 3 to 38? That's the question, and I don't have an exact answer in my heart what that is.
I do remember a conversation taking place in addition to a conversation with our finance director on the funding aspect of those firefighters. I guess to that mark and whatever research the city manager will bring at the next work session, I would entertain that communication.
So do you agree with me tonight?
For additional communication? Oh, absolutely.
Yes, and not, okay, where we're at until we change it. The mayor asked if everybody was okay putting it on the agenda and voting for it Monday. I'm not for that. I'm not for having that on the agenda Monday and voting for it because it's premature, because I think there's more research that needs to be done.
I think there's a couple of questions, though, and not to answer here tonight at the next work session is, 1, do we need additional firefighters?
Amen.
Is there an impact to our current service times right now in the community at the direction of the fire chief that is overseen by the city manager?
Amen.
I think that's a question. Question 2 is, what are the numbers? Period. That's it. And question 3 is, where do we stand financially in order to, again, fund those positions that we may or may not need? And in my opinion, those are the 3 questions I'd be looking for at the next work session.
I totally agree with you.
Excellent.
So, Rob, are those questions that you could find out for us?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, thanks for the discussion. So, Tony, that piece won't be added to Monday's agenda, just the actual budget ordinance.
I got it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. So let's take the time to get adjourned here for the meeting itself. And I know we do need an executive session. So Rob, if you'd like to
go through the process. Yep.
So we can take the vote and adjourn to executive session.
All right, I'll get it going here.